Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, February 12th, and the public safety meeting is now called to order. We begin to acknowledge that the land on which we gather, and that is currently known as the city of West Hollywood, is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kritz people. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner, will you please lead us? If everyone will stand and place their hand over their heart, please, their right hand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commission Secretary, may I please get a roll call?
Commissioner Blau?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramian?
Present.
Commissioner Freiberg?
Here.
Commissioner Nickel?
Here.
Vice Chair Saltzman?
Here.
Chair Hallman?
Here.
Please note that Commissioner Harrison is absent this meeting, and we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Item 4 is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda for February 12th? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Commission Secretary, may I please get another roll call?
Commissioner Blau?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramian?
Aye.
Commissioner Freiberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Saltzman?
Aye.
Chair Hallman?
Aye.
The agenda is approved.
Great, thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes from our January 8th meeting? Commissioners? Everyone good? Can I get a motion to approve?
Move approval.
And can I get a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Secretary, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Blau?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramian?
Aye.
Commissioner Freiberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Saltzman?
Aye.
Chair Hallman?
Aye.
The minutes are approved.
Great, thank you. Item 6 on our agenda, public comments. Commission Secretary, do we have any comments in chambers this evening?
Yes, we have 2 public comments this evening. First one is Nicholas Roybal. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, and also while we're waiting for Nicholas, come forward. Do we also have any comments in Zoom, just so I'm prepared?
We have no Zoom comments this evening.
Okay, great, thank you.
Evening, Commissioners. First, I want to give thanks to our Sheriff's Department, to Captain Mulder, to Lieutenant Lapkin, to Sergeant Duran, and to all our women, men, and people in uniform that serve and protect us on a daily basis, including this evening. So thank you all. Which brings me to this moment. We have a problem. Safety in East West Hollywood, it seems, is taking a dive. Vacant lots are a problem, and we are approaching the threshold of tolerance for the crime and the events and circumstances that surround our vacant lots. Specifically, I will speak to where I live, on Ogden, between Romaine and Willoughby. Last Friday, as you all know, there was an incident that occurred on North Genesee Ave with an unhoused person possibly setting fire, arson to a vacant property. Well, hours before that, at 909 Ogden Drive, which is right next door to where we live, 915 Ogden Drive, there were unhoused members in that vacant lot defecating, and by some residents allegedly overheard to wanting to commit arson. That was hours before the incident at Genesee occurred, where sheriffs had to respond, whatnot. So we have this problem with securing our vacant lots, which leads me to my ask for this. Can we please check in with property owners of our vacant lots and make sure they are secure? What is that mechanism for enforcement looking like, and the transparency of, here's the important part, letting the residents around those vacant lots know what is happening with the security of those vacant lots? Because right now, it's up to residents to enforce that security. It shouldn't be that way. Moving forward, I've also realized there is no neighborhood watch south of Santa Monica Boulevard on Ogden, which, well, as Lieutenant Lapkin was like, well, Nicholas, do you want to lead that charge? Which possibly, Jenny and I could be co-captains, possibly. And also moving forward, how can we disseminate information to our East Side residents' apartment units about the sheriff's, Danny Rivas, the manager of public safety, get that to our residents in our apartment units in the East West Hollywood area? Thank you. Time's up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Next speaker is Michael Vojkovic. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Michael Vojkovic, City of West Hollywood. Good evening, Public Safety Commission. I'm so sorry. It might be 2024, but I still get a chuckle every time I state the name of this commission. Wow. Yet another blockbuster agenda. I wonder if you can all handle it. With that, I'm going to start with the learned news that current commissioners and advisory board members were granted tours of the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation recently. This is highlighted because during my 5-year tenure as a member of the board of directors for WHCHC, I was consistently denied tours of the buildings. In fact, I believe this request was my second question ever asked to the board. The first being how a code non-compliant multifamily building was ever granted a certificate of occupancy when there are life safety violations. This is but one example for how WHCHC, with the blessing of this city, its council body, its constituents, of those, a large percentage from the gay community, will dehumanize certain individuals, especially those who hold higher education and are disciplined in a field where the failings for this city are easily visible, understood, and called out. On the subject of dehumanization, and to the previous speaker, I once tried to start a neighborhood watch meeting south of the boulevard, mainly around the Sierra Bonita area. And what I was confronted with was lies from the fire department, no answers, no support from the city. I recently learned that there was a little fire on Sierra Bonita. We've had many fires in that neighborhood, including the northeast corner of Gardner and Romaine. In 2023, I have come before this board and I have consistently asked for block-by-block ambassadors to walk this portion south of the boulevard, essentially from Martell to Fairfax. And still, to this day, February 12th, 2024, I have never seen one single ambassador. It is clear who gets the focus, who gets the attention, who gets the little special gloves. You know, it's shameful. Public safety doesn't exist south of the boulevard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. There are no more comments, public comments in chambers.
Then we are going to move. I just want to make sure the gentleman sitting on the front row didn't want to speak as well.
Well, if I can, I would like to. Yes. The thing is that, first of all, hi everybody. Um, this is the personal question of me and my family, basically my mother. I'm not feeling safe in my building because, you know, nobody cares. We don't have management. We don't have management on site or whatever. Nobody appears. We don't have security. Last week, my storage was broken and some valuable things were stolen, which I can't get back because they don't sell. And, you know, a lot of amenities broken in the house. Well, our house, it's 7111 Santa Monica Boulevard, the Dillon. I think you know. It looks abandoned. When I've been last time in City Hall, I was said that I should ask for reducing the payment in half, like to $400. But I didn't find anyone who will take this application or whatever. So I'd like to find out if we can do something with this because nobody cares. We live like how we can. What are we paying for? Nobody knows. That's the question. Thank you much.
Thank you. Item 7 on our agenda is unfinished business. We do not have any unfinished business to discuss, so moving on to item 8, new business, our monthly report from our fire department.
All right, well, good evening. Drew Smith, Los Angeles County Fire Department. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief. See a few new faces, so I just want to introduce myself. So my responsibility is your Fire Chief for West Hollywood. I have monthly reports for December and January. To start that off, your West Hollywood fire stations are averaging still at 20 runs a shift, so relatively busy. We're maintaining a healthy workforce, and I'll go through the combined data that I have for December and January. So we had a total of 18 fires. We had a total of 890 medical runs, and 231 required advanced life support, and 436 required basic life support. We had 0 hazardous materials calls. We had 12 hazardous condition calls. We had 26 service calls, and good intent calls was at 283. And as you know, I like the good intent calls because that means people are paying attention. They're calling because they have something that's that needs law and fire to come and look at to stabilize whatever the nature of the emergency may or may not be. So I really appreciate the involvement from the community who calls 911 so we can go out there as efficiently as all possible to evaluate and mitigate if needed. With the fires, we did have 2 fires that, within a structure, one of those being at the 1200 block of Fairfax, and that was it was a fire in a bedroom on a 1-story, and the fire cause was electrical. And it did have some pretty significant damage to property and contents, but the swift action by your firefighters kept it really contained, which is very good because that's what they're trained to do, of course. And the second, which was middle of the month last month on 7500 block of Hampton, and that was smoke from the first floor of the apartment building. There was also electrical fire started in the kitchen of one unit, and then we had to displace several people. So we have that infrastructure in place. Anytime that we do have a fire, I communicate that immediately once I have the information after my firefighters, my command staff is stabilizing the incident. I communicate that with Danny Rivas, and so that information get out there so we can make sure that we have that support network in place for any of the occupants that may need to be displaced or need additional help. As far as the rubbish fires, I talk to this every time I'm here. They're going to continue to happen. People throw out the word arson. Arson is very challenging to convict. And one reason is we have to have a potential suspect. We have to have them caught in the action, and then we need to go through the process of conviction. And so with our law partners, we have that in place, but with the amount of people within West Hollywood, whether they live here or they're transient, we have a lot of those circumstances. And I also talk to the outdoor fires. They all start small. They all have compounding components to them that they all start small, but have the potential to get into structures and commercial occupancies where people live and work. So we know we have a high vulnerability for that in West Hollywood. And so with your law partners, your fire agencies, we're in the neighborhoods all the time. We get there quick. But it's a challenging area to work in because of the makeup of West Hollywood. And so just knowing when I see that these two significant fires that had significant potential and the extent of the damage and is, I don't want to say minimal, it was extensive. But we have a lot more challenges and complexity to those incidents that could be. So, and I know that I talked to a lot of folks in West Hollywood, and they're very appreciative of their fire department. I just want you to know, and the citizens and residents of West Hollywood, that we appreciate the support that you give us, because that feedback's important. So that's all I have. I'll leave it to you for any questions.
Great. Commissioner Blau and Chief, can you just pull your microphone in a little closer?
I can. Sometimes I can project pretty loud. You go, whoa, easy. Too much coffee today, Drewski. I get it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Smith. I have a question about the electrical fire. Do we know what caused it directly, the electrical fire? Because obviously electrical fires could come from, disrepair or an overloaded circuit, or even, just a happened short on a wire, especially in a kitchen. If we're talking about like GFI outlets
correct.
Not working, correct? So do we know what caused this? Because that gives me personally anxiety.
Right, so I don't know the direct cause, so we know that it was an electrical fire, so we don't know one thing. Could it be a malfunction from an appliance? Don't know. Could it have been from an overloading circuit? Don't know. Those are hard to deal with if they don't track all the way back to possibly the circuit panel. That we know we had a failure within that wall socket that could have been triggered by possibly an appliance. Mm-hmm. So depending, you have to remember that with some of the older construction in West Hollywood, the microwave wasn't invented yet. Okay? So some perspective is when we start putting appliances within our house to make it comfortable, sometimes they can get overloaded. And sometimes there is just accidental failures that happen in appliances that happen. But to answer your question, I don't know, but I could look into if they know the exact cause of what happened on electrical fire. But usually we don't dig too deep into that. We just know that it was an electrical malfunction of some sort.
Okay, thank you. And are there any tips that you can share with the community about how they can prevent their residences from electrical fires, or any other tips?
I can. Smoke detectors in every living quarters for early detection. And also remember, for your extension cords, they're for temporary use only. So there gets to be a lot of creativity that goes on there in the household. So just remember that your extension cords, when you're plugging multiple components into that, could overload that circuit, that wiring, depending on how many amps it's willing to support. So just when you start putting multiple appliances or fixtures into a multi-strip or an extension cord, that you can have a potential to overload that circuit. So it's nice to have those GFIs, as you mentioned, in the kitchen and bathrooms is where it's required. And also, if it has a 2-plug outlet, there's room for 2 fixtures to go in there and appliances, rather than using it to plug an extension cord in that now gives you the ability to operate potentially several that can overload and cause failure.
All right, thank you. In terms of, one last question, in terms of the once every 3 years, I don't know what the right phrase is for that, but the fire prevention inspection that the county does, or the fire department does, what is the scope covered by that? What do they look for when they go to any of the multifamily dwellings?
So there's different components of that, from a station occupancy inspection or fire prevention, based upon the type of building it is. So for your engine companies to do residential, we're looking for smoke detectors in a room and serviceable fire suppression systems, which may be, if it has a kitchen, the hood system needs to be done every 6 months, or your fire extinguishers, if they're outside, that they're serviceable and are in 1-year compliance. So on our multi-occupancies, it's going to be smoke detectors. We're also looking for panic hardware, making sure that no exits are blocked or locked that shouldn't be. We look at the staircases for egress, and those smoke detectors, fire extinguishers in the home.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for your report.
Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair Hallman. Assistant Fire Chief Smith, thank you for your report. So I did just have a question about the fire that occurred on Friday, this last Friday, at 1013 North Genesee. Are there any details that you can provide?
So if I recall, and I'll have to ask Danny, this is the one, the pallet fire? Is that the one that was the pallet fire? Yeah, it was an outdoor pallet fire. So nothing specific besides that it was a pallet fire outside. So I have nothing to say how it was started, just that your West Hollywood firefighters responded there was a pallet outside and it was limited on any extension anywhere. So I don't have any, Commissioner Nickel, any specifics on that. If I had it, I would tell you. But truthfully, if we don't see something that's happening, somebody fleeing, we deal with the outdoor fire. Make sure that it's extinguished and doesn't have any potential to, of course, transition anywhere else. So.
Well, it's good that you caught it and that it didn't spread, that it was contained.
Yes, it is.
And then 7 of the 9 fires reported in the different incidences were rubbish fires. Is it the same thing again? Is it people trying to stay warm and starting a fire for that? Can you characterize them?
So, not necessarily. There is a significant amount of those fires that are by mistake. We have a lot of dumpster fires because sometimes one person throws in something, somebody throws something else. You could have something that has a reaction. We could have something just out of pure carelessness or mistake. So it's very hard to detect if it was intentionally set. But West Hollywood is not unique on the amount of outdoor fires. We get a lot of them in the county of Los Angeles, especially in the urbanized area. We get a lot of them. And I've talked about this year after year after year, month after month after month. It really concerns me. But once again, with the actions of law, or block by block, and us, we don't have some more consequence behind them because of early detection. And people are calling.
Which is good.
It is good.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Aramian.
Thank you. Good evening, Assistant Chief. Thank you for your report. I just have 2 questions. In regards to the rubbish fires, I do see that rubbish fires are the main source of these fires. most of these dumpsters in West Hollywood, as far as I see, some are locked, some are not locked. Are the dumpsters in our city supposed to be locked so it's not accessible for the unhoused or scavengers to prevent fires from starting?
So, for trash areas, there is a fire code for that. If there's, I don't believe that there's a city ordinance for locked dumpsters. So a lot of the homeowners, landowners tend to manage their trash control, not just for fires, is so everybody goes, oh, here's a free dumpster, I'm moving out of my apartment, and they fill somebody else's dumpster up. So where the location of the dumpsters are, there is fire code in respect to that, but as far as locking, the answer is no.
Because in my neighborhood, when I walk my dogs, I see, I would say about 60% of the dumpsters are locked, and the rest of them are not. Is that something that we could look into, Danny, Director Rivas, to see if, anything to help prevent more fires, if it's something that the property owners can do, because Athens will have to have access to that. I know Athens does offer locked dumpsters at an additional charge, I believe, or I know they charge businesses additional charges. I don't know if that's something that they will offer property owners for the dumpsters. Do you know?
I do. So thank you for the question, Commissioner Ramamian. So Danny Rivas, Director of Community Safety for the city. I know you mentioned 60% and maybe in your neighborhood, that seems pretty high. I would say just in general, throughout the community, it's far less than that. For operational purposes, Athens, who's our contracted waste hauler, typically does not place any sort of locks, but to your point, that is an additional minimal charge for commercial businesses or even for residential properties, apartment, multifamily, right, complexes. If they are having issues, then that is the first thing that absolutely is offered to them, but it isn't required. It's something that's offered voluntarily, but it does take additional time for the waste haulers, right? When they're coming through their routes, they have to get out. Now they have to unlock. They absolutely do have keys. They are the ones that provide the locks specifically for those properties that do have locks. And so it's not a city ordinance. It's not something that hasn't been discussed before. It has in terms of that, but really the city's perspective and position has been to kind of allow, right, that particular property owner, commercial or residential, to kind of choose and elect to do that. But it is an option for folks.
Thank you. And the other question, just out of curiosity, Chief, is I noticed that you guys installed, or you guys didn't install, but a fire signal right outside Station 8. It was good to see that. I live just a block from the firehouse, and I know how difficult it is to back into the station with vehicles not giving you guys the right of way. Has that been fully operational yet? And if it is, I haven't seen it, if I'm missing it, or when will it be operational?
We're very happy to have that. So, I don't know, is it operational? Is it up and running? Do we flip the switch yet, Danny?
It's not up. And so, yeah, there is a delay right now that we've been dealing with as it relates to Edison, Southern California Edison. And so, as you mentioned, everything is installed, and ready to go. But until we have Southern California Edison actually place the power and do what it is that they need to do to kind of service that traffic signal, we're at their mercy right now. And so we continue to follow up with them, and so we'll definitely put in requests, and we know how important that is to get that up and running for our Fire Station 8. So,
and we want to thank you for that, because that's huge for us. And so I want to use the term traffic friction. There's a lot of friction that goes on compared to driving 15 years ago. So now with iPhones, big screens on things, there's a lot of friction that goes on when people are driving. So that signal is going to significantly, we have a lot of near misses on Santa Monica Boulevard at Station 8 when your firefighters need to back that 50-foot tiller truck back into the station, and for all the apparatus that comes out of there. It's going to be really, really nice for us. So we really appreciate that support for putting that in. It was a task for us all to get it done. So we appreciate that effort that you put in for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Freiberg.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for your report. I actually don't have any questions for you. I wanted to direct my question to Director Rivas. Since all of these vacant properties seem to be a big problem, a great concern for a lot of our residents, I mean, it's a scary thing, especially if you have mobility issues and you have a vacant lot next to you. You can't just run out of the house if someone lights it on fire. So I'm just putting that out there. But I was just wondering, has there been any change in policies for the city, the way that you're handling any procedure changes since all of this has been happening? And it's obviously a great concern for our residents.
I wouldn't say any policy changes. The city has a vacant property ordinance that's in place that allows our code enforcement staff the ability to address problematic vacant properties.
Is this something new, or is this something we already had to begin with?
This is not something new. Yeah, so policy has not changed. That's
Nothing
something
has
that's
changed.
So the policy is currently in place. So nothing has changed in regard to policy. So when I hear policy, I'm thinking of municipal code changes.
Let's say proactive steps so this concern, so something like this doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, so our code enforcement team is continuing to inspect problematic properties to the best of their ability, and so they're obviously continuing to focus on those properties that have been brought to their attention by the community, and also being as proactive as possible. And so they will continue to kind of go through that administrative compliance process following what's been adopted and what's reflected in our municipal code currently.
So then how many times would they visit a property if they hear about it? Like let's say the one Michael is talking about. How many times would they go out and check that out? When you say inspect.
Yeah, I'm sorry, who you said Michael?
Michael, in the back.
Okay, I don't remember exactly which property that he referenced, but it depends.
Say any property in general. You said that they come out and they inspect it. So I'm just wondering how often they would go out and inspect the property.
Yeah, so it all depends on what stage and what category that property falls into. If they're getting repeated calls, that could be something that's done on a weekly basis, maybe even more frequently. If there's a trespassing and stuff of that nature that's being reported, then code enforcement staff will work with our West Hollywood Sheriff Station as well. If it's something that's a vacant lot, or maybe there's not a structure and they're not getting as frequent calls, but it does fall under the definition of a vacant property, then that could be inspected once a month, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. So it all depends on the type of property and the reports that are being received.
So then you would say it's kind of up to the residents to make the call in to let you guys know, and then that would increase inspections.
So there are proactive inspections that are done, but if we are receiving reports, then it's up to the code enforcement team to certainly prioritize, more frequent inspections.
And then I would assume they would tell the fire department about it? About the inspections, if they see something, or?
Yeah, so the fire department is made aware. They participate in the vacant property task force meetings that are held internally. But in terms of addressing the issues that I'm hearing brought forward this evening, that's not something that the Los Angeles County Fire Department would be addressing. That's something that code enforcement staff would be working in conjunction with the West Hollywood Sheriff Station because of the trespassing issue. And so that issue is dealt with specifically by our sheriff's deputies, not code enforcement officers. But on the administrative side of things, in terms of having what's called a letter of agency on file, which gives deputy sheriffs the ability to access a property and even remove folks from private property without the owner being present. So those are some of the tools and some of the things that are mentioned in the vacant property ordinance. If there are trespassing issues and we have evidence of there being, in fact, trespassing, we have fires, calls for service that are documented. We have calls for service that our sheriff's deputies are responding to, that they're having to remove folks from vacant properties. Then all of that allows our code enforcement team to be able to issue orders that require on-site security, whether that starts off as a roving revolving security, whether that ends up being 24/7 on-site security. So it all depends on the situation. So that's how those situations are handled.
Okay, and one last question. How many vacant lots do we have? Do you know?
I wouldn't be able to know off the top of my head right now. Yeah, I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you.
Can I weigh in on that with you? So what is our role? Is we know with the communication we have with Danny's office is we know that we have a different set of challenges with apartments or buildings that are either occupied or unoccupied, and those unoccupied buildings that we know is going to give us a different set of challenges because people that have a vacant building, they try to lock them as best they can. We know we're going to have access problems. We don't know how many people are in there. So the communication we have with Danny's office and also the sheriff's, that we know that we have this hazard. So we go and pre-plan for the what if or when. That's our role. And then if we have incident there, that's when all three of us come together at the incident and then look at the approach after the incident. So proactively, we know that they're vacant. We're doing that communication within the West Hollywood family, if you will, to help identify that, what we'll call a target hazarded area.
Okay, and do you know how many vacant lots we have?
I do not. I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Commission Secretary, do we have any comments in chambers on the fire?
Yes, we do. We have one. Michael Vojkolevich, if you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Most importantly, Michael Vojtkolevich, City of West Hollywood. Commissioner Freiberg, long time no see. For someone who didn't have a question, I really appreciated your questions. So I might be able to give a little bit more than what this person has stated. Given that this article from WeHo Times came out 3 days after your last meeting in January, I'm actually not surprised fire department report hasn't touched upon this. So here we go. I'm going to read verbatim from WeHo Times. City of West Hollywood claims that W.E. O'Neill, the contractor for Phase 1 of the library, the West Hollywood Park, deviated substantially from the agreed upon terms during the installation of the sprinkler system. Alleged deviations include using a different system than specified, employing materials not in accordance with the plans, and failing to properly pitch the pipe to allow water flow. These deviations, according to the city, went unnoticed for years until leaks began to develop, resulting in water damage throughout the library. You know, this comes from your building and safety, your code inspection, your code compliance. Moving onwards, the city asserts that O'Neill's actions have led to pervasive corrosion and damage throughout the sprinkler system, exacerbating over time and causing ongoing harm to the library. The complaint alleges breach of the contract, breach of implied covenant, breach of express warranty, breach of implied warranty of fitness for a particular purpose, and breach of implied duty to perform with reasonable care. This is this building that we're occupying right now, and this is not the only one. The building that I talked about, code non-compliant, multifamily for the disabled, mixed use, 7530 Santa Monica Boulevard. In the commercial level, the sprinkler system, the sensors were wrong. Above, where the disabled lived the first year, we were terrorized because they had the wrong sensors, and the life safety annunciators went off sporadically, leading to harm to me and my now deceased dog.
Thank you. Commission Secretary, any additional public speakers?
We don't have any additional comments in chambers.
All right, thank you. Fire Chief, thank you. As
Thank you,
always, it's great to see you. Please be safe.
Appreciate the support.
Item 8B will be our report from our block-by-block security ambassador program, the monthly report.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
So for the month of January, we continue to see an increase over 2023 in terms of hospitality business contacts, unhoused contact, and calls for service overall. But we did see a slight dip compared to December. The increased cold weather and rains saw a little less activity out on the boulevard and throughout the city. The trend that we did notice increase was encampments, obviously, as folks are trying to stay warm and seek shelter. We did encounter an increase in encampments, particularly around bus stops on Santa Monica, closer to La Brea, as well as the pavilions near Robertson. That area in particular is a little tricky since there's an area right along Santa Monica where it's considered private property, but there's a little bit of like a enclave, you can call it, where folks tend to kind of gather. And so working with pavilions, private security, and trying to keep that area clear, that's definitely a trend that we saw for January, and even through February, we'll see that continue. We've seen it continue, actually. Crescent Heights is also an area that we consider, a high encampment area, and we continually remove folks from there, whether it's from the front facade of the building or in the parking area of the building. So those are our major trends that we're seeing for December and continuing in February. Two items that I would like to report on that we've had great success with so far is our partnership with Be Alive. We were able to hold 2 separate classes for a majority of our ambassadors during our morning and night shifts that encompassed a 90-minute training per class around Narcan, harm reduction, and the safe needle exchange. I'm really happy to report that less than 2 weeks later, after we had those classes, we were able to administer 2 doses of Narcan on separate situations in early February that led to the saving of the life of 2 individuals. I'll provide more details in February, but I did want to highlight that as a great success for us as we continue to focus on training as much as possible, especially around Narcan, CPR, and happy to report that sensitivity training that we've been talking about for the last couple of months will take launch in early March. And so that would be a LGBTQ plus focused sensitivity training that we're looking to finalize, and we'll start to implement in early March. Another area of focus for us has been social service referrals as we encounter unhoused within the city. We are making a concerted effort to make sure that we are doing our best to provide social service referrals to city providers. I just had a meeting the other day with the coordinator with WeHo Cares, and he was really happy to share that one of our social service referrals that happened in January ended up leading to getting someone housed. So we're really happy about that, and obviously the large footprint of ambassadors were able to touch a lot more of the unhoused, and so we're really happy that warm handoff led to the housing of an individual. So we're looking to really continue our focus around making sure that folks know what the social services are within the city. In regards to the concerns around abandoned properties, I'll make sure to reach out to code enforcement, to Vito at code enforcement, and even with the Sheriff's Department to see if there's any high-risk areas that we can pay particular attention to. We know that there's a lot of vacant lots and there's only so much ground to cover, but we can definitely pay special attention to areas. And while we can't physically enter these properties, we can't be vigilant. We can be vigilant around, if we see any suspicious activity, and then escalating it to our sheriff's partners. We are looking to launch the 24/7 bathroom program starting in April. So that is something that we're currently looking to staff. We recently had conversations with the city in terms of launching that program. So currently we're working towards getting those positions filled so that we can support that program. Aside from that, that is all I have to report. So I'd love to hear your questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
I have a quick question,
Okay,
Chair.
go ahead, Commissioner Blau.
Thank you for your report. One of the questions, I actually have two questions. My apologies. The first question is there a way that in the future we can include in this report some sort of like heat map of the deployment showing kind of where our ambassadors are walking around the city, so that as the community looks at that, we can say, oh, obviously we're not gonna always see when someone's walking past. That way we can point and know if areas that are of concern are getting supervised a lot or a little. That would be very helpful. And I actually lost my second question, so just that one.
Yeah, so to answer your question, we've actually been talking recently with Danny and Anita about providing heat maps. We definitely have the capability to do that, so you can see a concentration of where activity is with our ambassadors, and really allows us to kind of tell the story of our footprint within the city. So
Great.
we're
Thank
definitely
you.
working on that now.
Thank you. I think that'd be great to see. I remember what my last question was. What are the reason for the inclusion of the 7 calls at the end of the report? They seem, I can't tell the relation between them to any one instant type, or why this 7 was selected to be included for the response times.
We only had 7 escalation calls to the sheriffs.
These are
so that
escalation
this is a
calls.
total calls. And so what I tried to do is I try to be more descriptive about how we came to that call and then what it was about.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to provide more detail.
No, that's good. So we only had 7 escalation calls to the sheriff from block by block within the reporting period.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was good enough. I didn't know that. Thank you. That's my only question.
Great.
Thank you.
Commissioners, anyone else? Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I appreciate it. Just 2 reminders or requests. I raised this once previously, about 6 months ago. The reminder is to the ambassadors and your supervisors to obey traffic rules. It is frequent that I see and that people I speak to in my neighborhood tell me that they see ambassadors riding bicycles on sidewalks in manners that are not safe. And the supervisors driving in the vehicles, this is particularly Norman Triangle, not stopping at stop signs. And just a reminder that that matters to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramian?
Thank you, Chair. Again, thank you for your report this evening. And Commissioner Blau already asked the question I was going to ask as well, but I just want to expound on it if I can. So the response time that you guys list on here, the 7 response calls, these are only calls that were escalated that required the sheriffs to respond.
Yes.
Is there a way to get response times for the standard calls for most? I know there's a lot of calls that you guys do, and I don't know how you guys would determine what calls to list on that. But I would like to see also what the response times are for ambassador calls that are not escalated to the sheriffs.
So to clarify, Commissioner Ermine, for example, like to the fire department or emergency services?
Well, these response times, for example, call 1, proactive patrol. I'm assuming an ambassador made contact and then had to escalate the call to the sheriffs.
Correct.
So, for example, if, John's Bakery down the street calls the ambassadors, I would like to know what the response time is for Ambassador A to go to John's Bakery and see what's going on. Is it 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 3 minutes? Is there any way to see what the response times are for regular calls?
So you're referring to ambassadors responding to calls of service and
Correct.
how long it's taking them to get there?
Correct.
I'd have to look into that further.
Yeah, just to kind of hop in too, I know it's something that we've discussed, and you'll see that, you always see it for like the sheriff's department. They provide an average in terms of response time. You wouldn't be able to itemize, because if you look at the volume of calls, it's a lot of manual work just looking at their smart system and database. And so, I know these calls, obviously, they're able to kind of drill down on the ones that they escalate to fire sheriffs, right? And then they look at those ones individually. But Erica could certainly, talk with David, her vice president, and see if maybe there's a way of kind of, bulking them together and maybe mirroring something that you see like in the sheriff's department on the cover page. If you look at the crime stat every month, you'll see that first page kind of gives you the average. Maybe there's something you guys can kind of mirror, but I don't know how the system, the capabilities of doing that or not.
That's why you saw the hamster wheel in my head turning, like I'm trying to think how we can do that. I off the top of my head, I don't know if we have the capability of doing that, but I can certainly look into it. And like Danny mentioned, that's something that we're in talks already, just to see, the average response times, but we can definitely look into it for sure.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Ryan, you know what, and I'm just wanted to hop in too with Vice Chair Saltzman's earlier comment too. I think it's so important too for community members to know that if they are seeing ambassadors, on a sidewalk when they shouldn't be. There are certain streets in our community that don't have bike lanes, so our ordinance does allow bikes to be on sidewalks in certain sections of the community, but obviously there are sections where they shouldn't be, and obviously any sort of traffic-related concerns. And so if they are seeing that, please report that. To the ambassadors, please report that to community safety as well, because then we can follow up, and if we know like the specific day or time, then Erica and her team and her leadership team can look into, who the ambassador was, and be able to have a conversation and address whatever issues may be there as it relates to that. So I just wanted to make a comment on that too.
What would be the best method for members of the community to get in contact and report such things?
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, if they wanted to call the city, community safety, they can email us at safety@weho.org. And Erica, I'm going to turn to you to see what would be the best number to contact block by block if that's an issue.
The best number would be the WeHo, like our bid number, where we receive calls for service. It's the 888 WeHo bid. So they can call there and report that. And usually our team leaders or supervisors that, are yielding calls are really good about letting me know, like, hey, community member or resident reported this. And so if they list their contact info, I'd be more than happy to get back to them. Or they can email me directly at eleon@blockbyblock.com.
I have one last question. Based on the report that you submitted, attachment 8B, it looks like the majority of the activity for the ambassadors happens on Santa Monica Boulevard compared to Sunset, Melrose Avenue. Do you know why Sunset isn't getting as much usage out of the block-by-block ambassadors as Santa Monica Boulevard is? Because you would think Sunset Strip, busy Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, that the ambassadors will be just as busy as they are in the Rainbow District or in Santa Monica Boulevard in general. So do you know if it's some outreach has to be done to the businesses, making contact with them, reintroducing them to the block-by-block program? Because I would love to see that Sunset figures come up a little bit.
We can always continue to improve on our outreach to the businesses, but from what I've seen since I've been managing the program, generally Sunset, we really don't get very many calls for service. I know that obviously we have the kiosk up there, and even the kiosk does not get very many folks stopping by, for hospitality assistance or anything of the sort. And then a portion of that, the portion of the Sunset Strip that we are contracted to cover is the footprint is so much smaller than Santa Monica Boulevard, and the concentration of businesses, residents, clubs, and everything in between is a lot higher on Santa Monica. So that is partly the reason why you're going to see a lot of that. But we can always definitely look at, what our business contacts look like, and making sure that businesses out there know that they can contact us. From my conversations with our overnight supervisors on, activity on the Sunset Strip, a lot of the businesses there already have, especially because there are a lot of high-end venues and businesses there as well, like Melrose. A lot of them already employ their own internal security, and so that helps us out. But we can definitely look into what else we can do to make sure that we're making a bigger footprint there.
Thank you. I have a question. Speaking of footprint, do we know what the footprint is for coverage on south of Santa Monica, around Ogden, say Curson, in that area? Like, does the team go, Sierra Bonita, do they go south of Santa Monica?
So without having the map in front of me, but yes, of course, we go south of Santa Monica. Sierra Bonita, as you all know, we had a 24/7 kiosk there after the fire was there. So that's definitely an area of patrol for us. But I can look to see where the boundaries lie, to see where that cut off. I don't have that in front of me, but I can definitely get that for you.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful. Thank you. Commissioners, anyone else? Commissioner Secretary, do we have any questions in chambers?
Yes, we have 2 comments. First one is Michael Vojkolevich. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening once again, Michael Vojkolevich, City of West Hollywood. After the fire. There was no kiosk after the fire on the 1000 block of Gardner, just a block over from Sierra Bonita. For a city that is now gloating about how much money it has, and I want to say something positive, so let me just interrupt myself by saying how nice it is to have a speaker timer in this council chamber, whereas other venues where meetings are held, there is no such thing. But for a city that's been gloating about its war surplus of cash, it leads me to believe that they're not hiring the right people. They're hiring people who are very good at giving excuses. I may be without a service animal that stood beside me for nearly 16 years in this city, but I am now on one of those evil scooters, those nasty little e-scooters. Point being, I get around faster on the individual blocks, again, from Martell to Fairfax. And I must apologize, I was in Vegas when that fire happened. Again, before that fire, I've never seen block by block, even though I've requested many times, in part in front of this commission. So when you get home, or maybe tomorrow when you start your day, check your map, check your facts. But as a long-standing resident on the east side, I am telling you that I have a problem with what you're stating, because I believe it's not true. With the exception, I'll give you that, with the exception of the after the fire. You know, the house on Sierra Bonita, the house on the corner of Gardner and Romaine, they were there abandoned. They were issues of life safety for years. This is nothing new. This city is small. This is something that has been happening not just in this millennium. And the fact that excuses, we're not sure, we're gonna have to check our little map. You know, you commissioners are the type who would actually accept such garbage.
Thank you. Commissioner Secretary, any other comments?
Yes, Nicholas Rodwell, if you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
I'll keep it real quick. First, Chair Holman, thank you for bringing up coverage south of Santa Monica Boulevard. And Erica, I do have a request for you. As a community leader, as a community advocate, as an action leader for the city strategic plan coming up, I do request that you map out block by block patrols south of Santa Monica Boulevard from Fairfax to La Brea starting this evening. That's our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
We don't have any additional comments in chambers.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Secretary. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Moving on, item 8C will be our monthly report from our Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So our report this month is going to be a little bit condensed down for time's sake. We have some special presentations that we're going to be having for you guys today. So our general information, we're going to be condensing it down just a little bit and moving on to questions for you. For the month of January, West Hollywood station personnel handled 1,594 calls for service, 75 of these being an emergency response. Deputies made 43 felony arrests and 65 misdemeanor arrests in the month of January. Our Part 1 crime for the month of January, we had 204 incidents that fell into the categories of the Part 1. Part 1 by district, the West District accounted for 58% of the Part 1 crime with 119. City Center, 16% with 32. And our East End, 26% with 53. Theft incidents continue to be the main factor for our Part 1 crimes: grand theft, petty theft, vehicle burglaries. Pickpocketing incidents are on the rise. In January, we had 55 reported incidents. Several of these incidents were reported online. Our department is using an online reporting system that is available to report certain types of crimes. This system can be used for people who are not able to come to the station or have us respond to their location. We may start seeing an increase of some types of crimes with this convenience. People are making those reports online, and they're finding it more convenient in turn, where we used to see them not report these type of crimes because they didn't have time to come to the station or we didn't have time to get to them. For January, our station volunteers donated 246 hours, included duties such as the public counter, social media support, and assisting with the Rose Parade. On February 2nd, deputies responded to the 8900 block of Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood for a person throwing chairs and items inside a location. He left that location and entered a bank that was less than a block away. Everyone inside the bank exited in fear, and the male inside stayed inside the location by himself. After lengthy negotiations, the male complied to deputies' commands and was taken into custody without further incident. The male was charged with vandalism. This incident was reported on local social media, and I figured you might have some questions regarding it if you saw it. Today we have Sergeant Matt Davis here with our Traffic Investigation Division. He will be here to comment regarding some scooter-related incidents that you had questions about and any questions you have regarding scooters. We are open to any questions that you may have now regarding anything or directly regarding scooters.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair Hallman. Sergeant Duran, thank you for your report. And welcome, Sergeant Davis. Thanks for coming in.
Good evening.
Scooters. So on the 29th of December, there was the incident where a person was hit on the sidewalk. They were hospitalized. Can you give us any update? Was the person riding the scooter ever caught?
So that's been a pretty tough case because we came into it kind of after it happened. Everybody already had left, and so we've been kind of working backwards on it. He hasn't been identified. We have video, but we haven't been able to actually talk to the victim either. They haven't wanted to talk to us about it. So we don't have a whole lot of information on the case, and so it makes it kind of challenging because we don't want to put out any public responses for it yet because we don't know if the victim wants that or not. And we don't want to do that until we've had a chance to talk to the victim. So right now we're kind of up in the air. We don't have a whole lot of information regarding the case. But he did stay. He did provide or talk to the fire department. He didn't leave. So right now we're not really treating it as a hit and run. It could, if we got more information, it could potentially be a hit and run. But right now we're not treating it as a hit and run. It's an accident and he did stay, but that's kind of where we're at with that.
Okay, so if the victim is not cooperating or pressing charges, then it's sort of difficult for you to move forward.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We've contacted them 6, 7 times, and they just don't want to talk to us or give a statement. I know she was severely hurt, and so there's a lot of injury there, and I know that they're going through their own difficult times. So we're keeping it open. We're trying to give them time to talk to us, but at a certain point in time, there's not much more we can do.
So if you could identify the person, if charges were pressed, what could they be charged with?
So there's an infraction code for riding on the sidewalk that we could cite them for potentially, and if they didn't have a driver's license, we can cite them for that as well. But the hit and run wise, I don't think that it would be there. I don't think we have enough to be there because he did stay, unless he purposefully tried to get out of there. But we don't have any indications that that was really the case.
Okay, thank you. And then I did just want to follow up with the last 2 meetings we discussed the burglaries that were happening over on Rangeley and Dorrington. You did arrest someone. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was that person responsible? Have you been able to confirm that they were responsible for any of these other incidents?
I know that our detective bureau is trying to see if there's a connection between any of the other ones, so I can't speak to whether or not they've made the connection, but I know for that specific day, he was connected to 2 other residents. So as far as any other residential burgs, I don't know if they made any connections with it.
Okay. And then any update on the public information officer?
So I don't remember what the last month, I know that we had, they had past backgrounds and they were going through the medical and the psych. So like any other part of our department, we're very short-staffed, so it's the hurry up and wait. But I know that we're super excited because we are one step closer to getting our PIO, and I know that we have our volunteer and Sergeant Duran who are doing most of the social media, especially during the rainy storm that we had. We tried to push out as much information as we could. So we're working diligently to try and get them, but it's out of our jurisdiction, not jurisdiction, but it's out of our hands. It's the department has different people to hire, so you have to go to the medical aspect and they have to go to the psych. But I know that the background portion of it is done. So I know that our operations lieutenant was supposed to follow up last week, but I didn't ask him whether or not what stage we were. But I'll make sure to have an answer for you. I can email.
Yeah. So basically, a person has been identified
Oh,
as
yes.
being hired.
Yes.
You're just vetting them very thoroughly, as we would hope that you would do.
Yes, and they've passed their what we call the background portion of it, and I think they've been in the process for 4 months.
Right.
So it takes a little bit of time, and I know that they were short-staffed for. So just a basic understanding for our civilian personnel, there's a department for civilian personnel, and then there's a department for sworn personnel. So both of them are short-staffed, so they're doing a lot less. They're doing a lot more with a lot less employees. I mean, like anything else in our department, we're very short-staffed in every aspect of it. But I know that they're working tirelessly to try and get not just our PIOs, but there's many civilian positions that were down.
Great. Thank you so much.
And Commissioner Nichol, I just wanted to add to what Lieutenant Lapkin had mentioned. So the recruitment and the filling of the position that Lieutenant Lapkin is referencing, that is to fill one of our law enforcement technician positions at the station to serve on an interim basis as the PIO, but I don't want to confuse the commissioner, members of the public. The public information officer positions, which there were 2 of that were approved by the city council, that would be in addition to what Lieutenant Lapkin is mentioning. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I didn't want anybody to think that the position that's currently in the progress in terms of being filled is filling one of the 2 public information officer positions that was approved by the city council. So those 2 PIOs positions is still something that the city is working with the department on in terms of trying to fill. But in the interim, kind of the short-term approach, right, is to have somebody filling one of those public information officer positions to help out Sergeant Duran and Lieutenant Lapkin, right, on an interim basis through a law enforcement technician position assigned to the station.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report, helpful as it is every month. And I want to thank everyone in the Sheriff's Department for the work you do to keep us safe. It's a lot of hard work, and we appreciate it. I have 2 questions, one regarding the monthly report and one regarding an audit of the West Hollywood station from last year. First, regarding the monthly report, in the past we've talked on and off about traffic stops. And I want to commend the department because the department makes extraordinary amount of information available to the public about traffic stops, including the nature of the stop, the race identity of the individual stop, the reason for the stop, the outcome of the stop. And the data can be sorted so that you can display just West Hollywood data down to, as discreetly as down to 2 months. And I think that's very helpful. It's on the website, as you know, it's on the website for the racial and identity profiling dashboard. And I'm wondering, the question is whether it might be, if you would think about including that data sorted for West Hollywood in the monthly report. It is available online, but it's a little bit difficult to get to. It's a lot of steps to get there. Once you do, it's a very rich set of data. So my point in raising this is really 2. One, to remind my fellow commissioners and the public who might be listening that that rich data is available and accessible. But second, to ask you, Sergeant Duran and Lieutenant Lapkin, if you'd consider including West Hollywood specific data in the monthly reports. I think that would be helpful and promote transparency and accountability. I don't expect you to answer right now, but to give you some time to think about it. I'm happy to talk to you about what I would have in mind if you'd like, if that would be helpful. Second, my question relates to body-worn cameras. Specifically, there was an audit of the West Hollywood station by the Sheriff's Department's own Audit and Accountability Bureau, which was published last August 22nd of 23. And I just want to read one piece from it. I'm not going to ask you to respond to it today, but I want to identify it. It says, although all personnel, 100% of personnel who use body-worn equipment are trained, there were significant issues with activation of the cameras when required, and issues with inputting required information consistently and accurately. And then there are a number of recommendations for the department and the station about how to respond to that. And so my request is that you come back to us with a report on the status of your response to the items in the audit. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. But
Great.
one thing I can actually address, I have to look into the T-stops, the traffic stops, to see how we can
Okay.
figure out that data. But I know on the body-worn cameras, we have a watch commander who's actually doing them on a weekly basis, and anytime we fall short of whether inputting that information or docking it, it's very specific to the deputy who's failed to do that for various reasons. So that's being addressed. So it gets sent to all the supervisors. So let's say somebody from our team fails to either tag, what they call tag the video, or attach it to, what I mean by tagging is attaching it to a specific call for service, or whether it was a use of force, or whatever the information was. We get specific information within that 24 hours. So that supervisor is notified, and then we address it with the deputy. So we're, I think last month we were 98%, where we were close to 100. But I mean, we're every day is a challenge to try and remind the deputies. It's not, I don't think it's for malintent or malice. It's they forget to dock it, or they forget to tag whatever video they have. But it is addressed when it comes to our attention.
Thank you. I appreciate that with respect to the inputting of the data. I'm also concerned about the first part of that, which is the failure to activate the cameras in the first place, which in the audit says it was 63% met the requirement, leaving a significant percentage that did not, and that's with respect to actually activating the cameras. So I appreciate the response on the data, but I'd be interested in a response on the activation question.
I can check on that too.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have a question. Circling back to the scooters, I want to make sure I didn't misunderstand you. I've never ridden a scooter. I'm not that, savvy. I would probably kill myself. Do you need identification when you're putting your information into the scooter to rent them? Or I want to make sure I didn't misunderstand you. Like you said something about driver's license, and the individual didn't have a driver's license. I just don't know what's required, or are they just open for anyone in the public?
No, you are required to have a driver's license to ride them. I don't know if they have to provide that when they rent them. I don't know what the process is for the company, or what's in place, but you do have to have a driver's license. We've talked about different ideas, and education is definitely, like you said, you don't know that much about scooters. Most people don't. Is education to make sure everybody understands the laws and the rules. Maybe even fixing signs on the scooters that says you're required to have a driver's license, which they might already. I'm not too sure. I don't know what the company does in regards to that.
Okay. Director Rivas, would you have anything to add regarding?
Yeah, I've never ridden a scooter, so I'm probably the worst person to ask. But yeah, I don't know. I've heard that there are some companies that require folks to kind of take a picture of it as they're creating their account. And then I've heard that there's other situations where they're just asking the person, right, as they're creating an account, do you possess a driver's license, right? And they click OK, and so they have that, right, on file, whether they do or they don't. So, but I'm just not certain on the specifics and which company does what.
Is there a way to find out?
Yeah, no, there is. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly find out, and we can send an email to the commission, for the providers at least that are participating as a part of the pilot program that the city has. We can certainly ask our long-range planning staff that manage that program to give us some information on that. I'm sure they would have that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. My other question. Sergeant Duran, I know you were looking into a situation that happened on Monday, February 2nd, that started around 4 a.m. at 1212 North Formosa, a disruptive individual in the carport, screaming. I know I called block by block around 425, and they happened to arrive at the same time as the sheriffs. I believe someone called the sheriff. So can you just give us any information on that particular call?
Yeah, so we did receive a call as well. Our call came in around 3 o'clock in the morning from another resident in the area complaining of two people arguing in that same carport. When the deputies got there, they did make contact with a person there. It appeared that the person might have had some mental issues going on. They tried to explain to him that he needed to move on. I don't know that he particularly did for very long. It sounds like maybe he left and then came back. They also did try to contact a responsible party or management at that location, but there was nobody on site at that time. You know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's pretty early. Most people probably aren't going to answer their phones. We also checked our files for LOAs, and there was no LOA on file for that particular address where he was on property.
Okay. I did watch the situation unfold, and I would tell you, I thought our deputies did a great job. The individual did become a little more agitated when they arrived, but I thought they engaged with him well. My memory is I did see them leave and he was still there. So he did not depart. He eventually did drag a mattress in, and I think he just kind of wore himself out from the whole ordeal. So my next question is, what are the policies and procedures in a situation like this? Like, we know you are not mental health specialists. So what are deputies allowed to do in a situation like this?
So, you know, primarily our deputies are out there to do whatever we can. We're not necessarily a mental health specialist. However, they are trained to deal with those type of situations and try to come up with remedies. Due to the time in the morning, our MET team would not have been on duty at that time. Our MET team doesn't operate at that time of the day. However, the other social services are available for us with resources like the West Hollywood Cares team. I don't know in particular that they called or didn't call for this particular incident, but that is an option for us, is to call somebody like the Cares team. If that person does meet some criteria or does request or we do see a need that we would call them. Primarily, we would have probably used our MET team initially if this was the right time of day, essentially, but you know, due to the hour, there was no MET team available.
So then I'm just curious, could a call like this be forwarded to 911 for paramedics to come out and check the individual, or how is that evaluated?
Typically, you know, we would call paramedics if there was some type of medical issue. You know, the paramedics, the same thing. They're not mental health professionals. They're there for medical treatment. So if the person wasn't requesting paramedics, they weren't exhibiting signs that they were a danger to themselves, a danger to others, they didn't want to harm anybody, they were just having some type of mental episode, that wouldn't be something necessarily that we might call paramedics for. You know, our deputies are pretty well trained in that type of regard, where it'd be a little bit of a waste of time to call the paramedics out and waste their resources to come out for something like that, where they wouldn't be taking any action essentially. Really what our guys would be out there to do is to try to evaluate that person to see if we can't help them in some type of way.
Okay, and again, I will state that I felt the deputies did all they could do in that situation under the umbrella of the laws as the way they're written. So thank you, because I know it was a difficult situation. Commissioner Secretary, do we have any public comments?
I have.
Oh,
my
sorry,
screen
go
is
ahead.
broken, so that's why I couldn't press my button. Just in an effort to get to know your department a little better, since the contract is here, and well, we need to know anyway. So when you hire new deputies, what is their background origin?
Background origin?
Yeah, like where do you get them from? where do most of your new hires come from?
I really couldn't speak to exactly where they come from particularly, but we do recruitment across the country, essentially. They do recruitment, different types of campaigns, whether it be online, social media, things like that. We do recruitment type things here in Southern California, obviously, where they do testing. They do recruitment in military.
And then how does that work within other cities for the sheriff's department? Do you get deputies from a different city?
We do.
Within your department?
Yeah, we definitely do. I don't want to speak to how they do that because I'm not that familiar with how recruitment and they go out there and touch those different parts of the country. But I can tell you that I personally know deputies that are currently working for us now that are from other states and other backgrounds from a large part of the country and that have made their way here to California, and now they're working with the Sheriff's Department.
So would you say most of the deputies are outside of the department?
I wouldn't characterize it as that if I were to guess, no. I would say
Okay.
that they're probably majority Southern California.
Okay. And I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I did hear this, that if, let's say, a deputy is coming from some other city, let's say LAPD or Sacramento, wherever, name any place, and they're under investigation and they decide to just quit and then they go to apply for West Hollywood, that your department wouldn't know anything about it because that particular station holds the records and you will never see the light of day. Or the records will never see the light of day for the new department for
No.
privacy reasons?
No, that's not correct. If a person applies for us for whatever position it is, whether it's a deputy or whatever other position, they do a thorough background investigation, which includes speaking directly to their current employer. So if it was, example, LAPD and they were under some investigation, they would definitely be speaking to LAPD as to what was going on to make that determination or evaluation whether we wanted to hire that person as an employee.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Ramian.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant, Sergeant, for your report. I just wanted to maybe answer Chair Hallman's question in regards to the scooters, because I have written them a couple of times. The ones that I've written, Lime and Bird, you do have to put a picture of your driver's license on there, and you also have to attest that you're wearing a helmet. And I guarantee you, people attest that they're wearing a helmet, but no one is wearing a helmet. And that's just my experience with them. You take your driver's license picture and then you're on your way, and then you attest to it. Just to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
And to the Sheriff's Department, I have a question in regards to the activity that happened at Bank of America last week, because I was just a few minutes shy of being into that branch that day. Because I did speak to the branch manager and talking and trying to figure out what happened. How did that call come through to the Sheriff's Department? Because it was initially listed as, in Citizens as a bank robbery. Is that how you guys received it?
No, I think that, so apps like Citizen, a lot of that information gets a little confused or convoluted with public perception as to what's going on. The call originated down the street at another business where they called and said that this person was inside there causing a disruption, throwing chairs, things like that. When we were responding to that location, he had left prior to us getting there, went to the bank and went running in the bank, started causing a disturbance there. So I think what happened was probably there was some conception that he was in there trying to rob the bank maybe, or people saw the response that was coming from us to the bank and just deemed it to be a bank robbery. But no, we never had the call as a bank robbery whatsoever.
Because when I did speak to the branch manager, he said that it took about an hour and a half, because I guess they were waiting for the Met team to arrive. That was the main delay. And I want to say, I remember him telling me it was an hour and a half wait time for the Met team. Was that accurate, and why did it take that long? And I know, during the police academy that we attended, we met with the Met team, and they did tell us that the response team could take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, coming from the east side to the west side. Just want to know if you could confirm what that delay that day was for that Met team.
I know there was a delay. I don't know particularly if it was an hour and a half. It very well could have been. I just don't know that fact or not. The delay was there because our MET team that's assigned here to West Hollywood was not available at the time of that call. So we did have to get one from out of the area to respond, but they did respond, what we call like an emergency response, like code 3 lights and sirens, responding here to the city as quick as they could to assist us with it. But I know there was a delay. I don't know how long the delay was.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to item 8D, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department contract. The Public Safety Commission will receive a report on the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department contract.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Public Safety Commission. As our representatives from our Law Enforcement Services Bureau from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department get settled in, I did want to first and foremost thank them for making it out here in person at our request to provide not only the Public Safety Commission but our community with information regarding the contract that the City of West Hollywood agrees to, like any other contract city that selects Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for law enforcement services. And so I really wanted to bifurcate the item that you have before you this evening into first having our representatives from our Law Enforcement Contract Services Bureau provide information about the contract itself, as well as our annual service level agreement, which is referred to as the 575 form, and then allowing the commission to ask any questions pertinent to the contract and the information that they're providing. Any sort of recommendations, however, to the City Council, I'd like that to be kind of the second part of the item. Our representatives here are not, here to answer questions as it relates to those policy recommendations, right? They're simply here to provide information to you all, to educate everybody, community members, about the contract process, and again, just to answer any questions related to that. To the staff item, I did attach as attachment A to the staff report the contract that every contract city, which includes West Hollywood, enters into with the County of Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and so that is attached as attachment A. And then attachment B, which we'll get into the second part of the item, reflects the history of sworn personnel that we've seen that's been adopted and approved by our City Council over the course of the last 17 years. And so with that, I'd like to now turn it over to our Contract Law Enforcement Services Bureau staff from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to provide a presentation. There is a PowerPoint, so then I will be switching that so that everybody can view that.
Great. Thank you, Director Rivas. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Rivas. So my name is Andrew Cruz. I am the acting captain of the Sheriff's Department's Contract Law Enforcement Bureau. I'm joined tonight by Lieutenant Eric Martinez, Sergeant Mina Cho, and Keith Ho. So it's an honor to be here tonight to have the opportunity to provide each of you with a brief overview of the Sheriff's Department's contract. Just a little background on the Sheriff's Department's Contract Law Enforcement Bureau. We're responsible for the administration and oversight of contracted law enforcement services for 42 cities, regional transit agencies, 9 Los Angeles community colleges, superior courts throughout Los Angeles County, various county departments, as well as state and federal agencies. Like I mentioned earlier, the 42 contract cities is governed by the Municipal Law Enforcement Services Agreement, which is often referred to as MLESA. It's an agreement between the County of Los Angeles, and our contract cities. It's a boilerplate template that is approved by the Board of Supervisors. So there is no adjusting or tailoring of the agreement to fit one particular contract city. The MLISA is a 5-year agreement, and it's currently set to expire June 30th of this year. Our department is currently working with the California Contract Cities Association, also known as CCCA, in renewing the agreement for another 5-year term. So as part of the MLISA, there are 3 attachments. The first attachment, as Mr. Rivas referred to, is called the 575, and that's the service level authorization. And that outlines service levels for each particular contract city. And Sergeant Ho will get into that a little further. Attachment B is the master rate sheet, which outlines the cost of each service unit. And those are provided by the county's auditor controller. And then lastly, attachment C is a public safety equipment in which our contract cities, if they wish to procure the services of additional public safety equipment in the form of what we call MDCs, or mobile digital computers, or ALPers, which are known as automated license plate readers, or the procurement of, say, a specialty black and white patrol vehicle. That's attachment C. So with that, I will hand it over to Sergeant Keith Ho, who will continue on.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Cruz. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity for us here to present to you relates to our contract services for the Sheriff's Department. So as you see in front of you, the service level authorization, which is signed at the beginning of every fiscal year. And the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, we employ what we call a one-cost contracting model, which every contract city purchases a deputy sheriff service unit. And for example, for City of West Hollywood, the city employs 70-hour cars. So what that means is a deputy sheriff service unit, the cost itself, it includes a lot of the overhead costs in our sheriff's department that support each deputy sheriff on the street. That is coming from supervisors, such as sergeants, shift sergeants, watch sergeants, watch commanders, and all the way down to our support staff, our station clerks who process the reports, the jailers in our station jails processing the inmates once they become our custody. So all these overhead costs that is developed by our audit controller, they look at all the numbers by every fiscal year, and they compile all these data, and which that is included in each deputy sheriff service unit. That's why we look at, say, one deputy sheriff. Everyone would ask the question, well, they don't make that much every year. But of course, because all these behind-the-scene activities, because it is a one cost, a single cost contracting that our department is providing. So all these extra costs that you don't see, it's all looped into the service that we provide to our deputies. So you see on the list, such as station supervision, station support, department-wide administrative support, some equipment and supply, and county support services that are all included into our deputy sheriff service unit. And so what we don't sell, but actually services that are available, for example, for West Hollywood, they are 70-hour deputy sheriff service units. So what that means is each unit assigned to the station, they work 70 hours a week, and each one of them provide 10-hour shifts. Now, you ask the question, well, no one works 70 hours a week, because based on our based on labor laws, everyone's working 40 hours a week, so the extra 30 hours for those services will require the secondary deputy to provide that service. So which means the city purchased a 70-hour deputy sheriff service unit. Behind that, number-wise, by personnel, you get more than a little bit over 2 deputies behind the 70-hour car. So that means the deputy on the days off will have a second deputy to supply that. Or if the deputy goes on vacation, on any medical leave or family leave, we'll supply that what we call relief person to fulfill the requirement. Other options that are available for all our contract cities are, look, example is 40-hour non-relief, which is a very, very basic service that some specialized team in different cities will purchase. There are some actually in City of West Hollywood purchase that service as well. What it means that is that person does the 40-hour, the deputy does the 40-hour. If they take a vacation, there is no relief behind that particular unit. Other options also available are the 40-hour with relief, 56-hour with leave deputy sheriff service units. Those are more common that we see out in the field deploy. But for the city concern, it is a 70 hours deputy sheriff's unit that the city contract for majority. As you see, the next slide that is presented to you is what we call our relief factors that, like I explained before, for example, the 70-hour unit, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Obviously, that requires a little bit more than 2 deputies to fulfill that contract requirement. So because our department, we does not contract number personnel in our the service unit, we contract based on service hours. So the 70-hour unit literally translates into every year the department's obligated to present 3,650 hours of service hours to each service unit the city purchase. And currently, the law enforcement service agreement is that the threshold that we have to meet the compliance is at 98% or better. So which means that once we reach the 98% threshold, what we are meeting compliance of the contract itself. So the next slide will illustrate to you is what it means our relief factor. As you see, this is a sample for a 56-hour service unit, which is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, translating 56 hours of services that we provide throughout the week. So one deputy will, traditionally will probably provide 5 days of service, and then the remainder of 2 days will be provided by the second deputy. Or vice versa, if the other deputy takes a vacation, takes a day off, there is a secondary person, or what we call relief person, to fulfill that schedule.
I'm sorry, are we missing data that's in the slide?
Yeah, if you kind of go arrow down, there's just a filling in of the boxes of the different service provide. There we go. Actually, we can fast forward to the next slide. So here's a mock-up of a fiscal year 23-24 of the 575, the service level authorization. So just for sampling purpose, that the city is purchasing the 70-hour service units, and each unit for this current fiscal year, the annual rate is at $600,024 and 120. So that translates into, you see across the board, how many service hours that this particular service unit provides and how many personnel that requires. So this is a sample mock-up of our service level service agreement that provides to all the contract cities at the beginning of every fiscal year. Right now, we're working on the next 5 year of the service agreement, and as well as developing the rates with the other controller for the next fiscal year. And that we just gave a brief overview what the Contract Law Enforcement Bureau services provide to our contract city partners, and as well as how we support our stations. We can open it for any questions.
Commissioners. Any questions? Commissioner Blau?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I guess a quick question. Reading through the contract, it says that we need to be agreed on our new contract terms 6 months before the expiration of the contract, which expires June 30th. And so we've already passed that time frame. So is the opportunity for adjustments and feedback for the contract closed?
So we are currently working with the California contract cities, and a working group has been formed that consists of certain city managers from each region of the county to provide their input specifically for the MLESA, the agreement itself. The 575 service level agreements, those conversations are had with each city manager as well as the station commander of whatever particular station that is. So we are working on the new agreement.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then you mentioned that to remain within compliance of the contract, all that's necessary is meeting 98% of the purchased service hours. That's correct, right? But nowhere in the contract does it state out what particular services are to be rendered across those hours. It's all pretty vague in terms of just providing general security, public safety related items. Is there some place that myself or the public could look to understand what the agreement is with a particular city, say West Hollywood, and the sheriff department about agreed upon services to be executed over those hours in the contract period?
So in the umbrella, as I call it, the umbrella agreement itself, actually it does spell out, let me try to find a specific section, that the sheriff's department, obviously we enforce the law, and as well as we work with the city to look for any particular way that the city would like us to address any issues such as quality of life issues. The reason being is because this agreement is applicable to all the 42 contract cities.
Mm-hmm.
So each city purchases service a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, we don't spell out exactly what, because such as, like for example, West Hollywood purchased the Met Team deputies.
Right.
So that would be part of the umbrella of the overall law enforcement services that we provide.
Okay. And so then, at least as far as the contract goes, I'm not a contract lawyer, and not to say that this would happen, but if we don't include KPIs or performance or service item agreements, then as long as bodies are showing up, then for the required hours, we could assume that the contract is valid and being executed properly.
Shift is when those minutes are being tracked, if you will. So each time the deputy logs on, they'll log on for the 10-hour shift. They'll respond to calls. They'll go in route 97, 98 to those calls for service. And so everything that the deputy does on that working shift gets documented and tracked.
Lieutenant Martinez, I'm sorry. Can we pull the microphone close to your yeah, sorry.
Do you want me to repeat that? Or?
I heard fine, personally.
You heard fine, okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. So then the answer is no, aside from showing up for the job, right? As long as, and not to say that that wouldn't happen, but just so that I understand the contract as well, right? We could be valid in the contract as long as the hours are being logged by signing on to the computer, right? When you start work and when you stop. I'm just trying to set my context for what is the expectation in the contract legally.
So I'm afraid I don't understand why the answer would be no.
Public safety is very important to everybody, right? And oftentimes, unfortunately, times when people feel scared, whether it's for good reason or not, they come back to and say, okay, what are our public safety people doing? What are they spending our time on? What are the metrics that they're working towards? What are their KPIs, if you will, in terms of response times? And are we getting the question that always comes up and has come up previously in the city here is, are we getting the value from contracting with the sheriff that we ought to get if instead we look at different options? And that's what I'm trying to understand through here, and as well, I think members of the public would be curious to know about as well.
Right, and so for accountability purposes, obviously our units do log on, like I said, log on, log off every day. They track their response times to the calls that they're deployed to. But anything outside of that, I would have to defer back to West Hollywood Station to address any of those further concerns.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anyone else has other questions, but I'll defer.
Commissioners? Anyone? Commissioner Nichols.
Thank you, Chair Holman. Thank you for your presentation. I just want to make something clear, see if I have this right. So as far as the amount for the 70 hours, it includes, you said it's all inclusive. It includes everything from vehicle maintenance, fuel for that vehicle, down to office supplies, utilities, correct? So I just want to make it clear that all of that money is not going directly to the officer, although considering the stress and the danger of the job, I don't know why anyone would have a problem with that, but I just want to make very clear that there is a lot included in that dollar amount, correct?
Correct. So the dollar amount, majority is going to salary and wages and benefits to the employee. Then certain percentages. So one of the advantage of the contracting service is the volume, because 42 contract cities purchase quite a lot of deputy sheriffs. So in the service unit price, majority it goes to our employee salary and benefits. Then other portions such as employee support, our psychological services bureau, is looped into some of this cost.
Great, thank you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Remian.
I don't know if this is a question for the Sheriff's Department or for Director Vivas, but has West Hollywood fallen below the 98% that we know of? And if so, what was the outcome of that?
I don't have those statistics offhand, but I just know that in the end, the agreement is to hit 98% per month. I would venture to say that we are pretty good at hitting the 98% mark, if not more, for most of our contract cities. We take that 98% compliance, we take it very seriously, and we do make staffing adjustments or whatever it may be to make sure we reach that 98% compliance.
Thank you. I have a question. Obviously, there's a lot of data here. We are a special events city, so how does that factor in with the contracts? Because with Pride and Halloween, there are additional deputies on site. We all remember the incident with the helicopter that landed on La Brea Avenue. How did those costs factor in?
So special events are not part of the regular deployment. That's what's dictated on the service level agreement. And any special events such as Pride event, Halloween festival, these special events such as Oscar parties, those are either they're separate individual private event contracts, or city will contract our station for additional deputies and for the deployment based on overtime hourly rate. So for example, the event you mentioned where the helicopter landed on La Brea and Santa Monica, that actually was our Special Enforcement Bureau. Those do not come extra. That cost is included into our Deputy Sheriff Service Unit.
Okay, but so then costs for the special events, those are factored in separately. Because obviously for Pride and Halloween, we need a considerable amount of individuals on the street.
That is correct. Special events are separate.
Okay.
So yeah, Chair, just to add, so Pride and Halloween and any other ancillary events, but I'm just going to use those two because those are our major significant events. We definitely pay for that separately. That's not a part of our annual contract, but as the sergeant had mentioned, when you have our Special Enforcement Bureau, which essentially is the SWAT team for Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and you have any other types of services, for calls for service that are occurring in the city, then we're able to take advantage of those services that are provided countywide. But specific to our special events. We work with the Sheriff's Department, our local sheriff station, and the Emergency Operations Bureau of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to look at deployment and staffing needs based off of the characteristics, right, of the event.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions?
One quick, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
What is our mechanism as a city to basically ensure that the equipment that comes as part of the overhead for a sheriff deputy that's baked into that cost, what's our method to ensure that the equipment they need to get the job done is supplied as part of that? I asked that question because having visited our sheriff's department just over here, you know, there's been instances where it's been informally noted that, you know, squad cars are broken, are not working, out of service, or there's been other reported instances as well where, you know, all the deputies on duty don't have the non-lethal, less than lethal devices, the tasers, batteries necessary for the tasers. How do we, what is the method working with the sheriff to ensure that we have the equipment we need?
Thank you. That was a good question. We do work with our partners at the CEO's office for the budget, for budget increase, for certain things like fleet. Our Fleet Management Bureau is constantly monitoring the miles on cars. As you can imagine, there is a lot of crashed black and white vehicles. And so that's where we go back to our training of emergency vehicle operations. Because a crash car means one less car for the station. Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine for the county, there's crashes, I hate to say it, on a daily basis through our deputies. And so we work with our Fleet Management Bureau as well as the partners at the Board of Supervisors and the CEO's office to get funding for new vehicles. I don't know what the fleet outlook is now. We have a whole separate department for our communications and fleet, but I know that is one of the priorities for the department is to purchase new vehicles. And so hopefully with that, we can start filling the gaps where we are short with black and white vehicles at our stations.
Okay, but in terms of a mechanism for us to say back, you know, we're short on fleet vehicles, or, you know, the city is purchasing batteries to supply tasers for the sheriff's department when that's not being supplied by the department itself. What is the method for the city to report that back? Is there one, or is it we need to call up Sheriff Luna?
So yes, there is a mechanism. It is for the city to have that ongoing conversation with the unit commander at West Hollywood Station so that we can address those concerns and make sure that they're brought to the unit commander's attention. So carrying on that conversation, whether it's the Public Safety Commission, the City Council, but to bring that to the attention of the station.
Okay, understood.
And when it comes to some of the things like Acting Captain Cruz was saying, with the fleet or with tasers, the county, the department is constantly looking to address those needs and to get additional supplies. We do know that we are working to fulfill, especially with the less lethal, right, to fulfill that concern with the cities.
All right, thank you very much. That was my final
Commissioner Blau, too, I just want to add that those conversations, as the lieutenant and acting captain had mentioned, do occur with our station captain, operations lieutenant, as well as our service area lieutenant. And so we meet on a weekly basis with the city manager as well. And so if there are needs and if there are anticipated delays, it's not uncommon at times for us to look at maybe purchasing some batteries or even calibrating meters and doing other things to kind of assist to the extent that we can, depending on the item and whatnot. And so those are things that we work with the department on as well. So I just wanted to make mention of that.
Okay, and so then the characterization that it's a all-in-one cost is not entirely practically accurate, at least as far as the city of West Hollywood goes.
It is for the contract basis, but that doesn't prevent any contract city from looking to purchase additional equipment or assisting in an effort if it's something that is of a priority and is a need of the station. Obviously, every contract city is a little different, but if we have the means and we're looking at a particular piece of equipment, I know that we've purchased for our West Hollywood Sheriff Station 2 mobile kind of command center vehicles in the past. And so that's just an example, right, to share in terms of something that the Sheriff's Department wasn't looking to provide, but at the time, right, the city felt that that was necessary because of the events and other things, just to add some additional equipment to be able to utilize here in the community. So there are instances where we do look at those, consider those, and make decisions on.
All right, thank you. And I don't know if it's in here and if you can provide it after the fact, Director Rivas, but if there's a reference for, the basic standard equipment that we're expected to have for each one of these positions of, hours, whether it be a 70-hour unit or 40-hour unit or what have you, if there's a reference that we can get to say, like, from the county, we're expected to see for every, 10 70-hour units, we're expected to have 5 black and white vehicles as part of that, that kind of thing. That's not necessarily in here, and I'm sure that it's documented elsewhere, but I would love to see that.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's something that contract law enforcement bureaus can respond to now, or if that's...
Yeah, definitely. We could provide that to you, Mr. Rivas. We don't have it on hand, but yes, we can provide that to him.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, any additional questions? Do we have any public comments on this item?
I see we don't have any public comments on this item.
Okay, great. Director Rivas, just so I have some clarity, and thank you for the report, receive and provide input. What is our next step as a commission?
Absolutely. So it sounds like we're good and with our representatives from Contract Law Enforcement Services, and so want to thank them for attending this part and providing the information. Again, I know they had a drive coming into the city, and appreciate you guys fulfilling the request. So thank you so much. You're welcome to stay if you like, or get back to the station or get home. So appreciate you all for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the next kind of second part, right, that I mentioned of the staff item is I really wanted to reference attachment B, and so I'm just going to place that up on the screen here, which is a spreadsheet, right, that accounts for the last 17 years that we have had approval from a sworn personnel perspective. So this does not take into account non-sworn positions, but I will just let the commission know and members of the community that currently we have 4 non-sworn positions that you're not seeing that are reflected here on this spreadsheet, but we wanted, for the sake of just focusing on our sworn personnel, our deputies, our sergeant, lieutenants, and our special teams, which is reflected as the community impact team deputies. And so I just wanted to go through that briefly. And so the first line item is our patrol deputies. So that is your deputies that are responding to calls for service. And then the second line, as I mentioned, abbreviated, we refer to them as SIT deputies. And so those SIT deputies are our COPS team that works the Monday through Friday primarily, your 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., if you will. And then that also includes our entertainment policing team deputies that work in the late evening hours, right? And so you're seeing kind of those set deputy positions there that are under the community impact team deputies. And then in addition to that, you have sergeants and lieutenants. And so we have 2 sergeants, one of which is Sergeant Jason Duran. The other is Sergeant Kevin Bowes. And so both of these sergeants supervise the community impact team deputies. And so that's why you're seeing 2 positions out of the 3 that are there. And then we pay for 1 lieutenant, and that is Lieutenant Fanny Lapkin, who attends the Public Safety Commission meetings and that you are familiar with. So that is the makeup of our sworn personnel. As you mentioned, our Contract Law Enforcement Services Bureau representatives have mentioned that there are other positions that are assigned to the station that we do not pay for. One of them that folks are familiar with is our captain. So you're not seeing a captain here as part of our contract that we have included as a part of the 575 form because every station captain is just provided by the Sheriff's Department along with other lieutenants and sergeants and other detectives and teams that we have that work out of the station. They do service other areas, not just the city of West Hollywood. So there are other areas, unincorporated areas, Universal City, right? Just to give you an example, studios and so the City Walk area that they provide service for that work out of the station. But we're able to take advantage of those services as well as a number of other non-sworn positions. I mentioned 4 that we have, but there are several others that are assigned to keep the station functioning that we do not pay for as a part of our service level agreement. And so most recently, we did have a city council last month approve adding 1 additional patrol deputy to our 575. And so the last column that you're seeing on the spreadsheet as fiscal year 24B reflects that. So currently we have 62 sworn personnel that are assigned to the city of West Hollywood. And so with that, in terms of next steps, Chair, that you mentioned, this is an opportunity for the commission to make any sort of recommendations that they feel necessary that could then be provided to the city manager's office as well as to the city council for consideration as we're leading into our annual fiscal year budget. And then just lastly, before I open it up to the commission, just know that the patrol deputies, our SIT team, as well as our sergeants and lieutenant that are part of the contract, there's ongoing discussions that occur weekly, if not more, on different situations with the station's command staff, so our captain, operations lieutenant, our service area lieutenant. And so if there are adjustments needed as a part of the approval of the item that went to council last month, there was a plan approach that was provided as a part of that staff item, and that was working in conjunction with the West Hollywood Sheriff Station in terms of what would be the best approach, to deal with the residential burglaries that are being experienced. And so the goal, is to decrease the level of residential burglaries that are occurring in our community. And once that's been successful and fulfilled, there can always be adjustments, as there always is, in terms of the level of deployment, focused operations, et cetera, that are provided and discussed by the sheriff station. So with that, Chair and Commissioners, I'm happy to answer any questions or open it up for the Commission to discuss.
And before we do that, Director Rivas, do we know when this item is going to be placed before City Council?
So I don't have a specific date, but typically you have a budget subcommittee that's comprised of the mayor and vice mayor. That typically occurs in April. And then from that, you have another discussion that potentially occurs in May, and then it goes to City Council as a full body in the first meeting in June. And so the first meeting in June and then the second meeting in June. But I don't have the calendar in front of me, but more or less you kind of see the sequence. And so I wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to hear from our Contract Law Enforcement Services Bureau. Hopefully that was helpful, not only for you, but for the community. And then as well as, get a snapshot of historically what levels of sworn personnel have been approved and adopted, and the discussions that have been ongoing as we lead into the months ahead.
Great. Thank you, Director Rivas. So, commissioners, with that said, Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair Hallman. And thank you, Director Rivas, for that explanation. I'm sure that I mentioned before that the national average for sworn officers is 2.4 per 1,000 residents. So West Hollywood has about 36,661 residents. That would be 88 sworn officers. We're at 62, that's about 70% of that. I would like to see us have a conversation just to see where everyone is comfortable with, what levels, if it's possible to see how we could work to get closer to at the national average. So I would like to hear what everyone thinks about that.
Director Rivas, can I ask what has been in the past? Do we know our maximum number here in the city?
I mean, there really isn't a maximum number. That's
I guess what we've had in the past. What?
Yeah. So what I have the spreadsheet at the bottom where I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the fifth where it says total sworn personnel on that line item will show you, right, for the last 17 years or so, right, what has been the maximum number, more or less, that's been approved by the city council.
Okay, thank you. I see that. A lot of data.
Yes.
So am I correct in 67? Yeah, it's the most that we've
It
had
looks
here
like
in the city.
67, yes, was the highest that we've had in the last 17 years. It looks like for a couple physical years, it was at 67.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioners, does anyone have a response to Commissioner Nichols'
I do.
question?
Chair, if I can.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blau.
You know, I see the numbers here, and I think it's important to note. And I don't know what the population change has looked like, but certainly, you know, since 2008, I think it'd be safe to characterize that whether or not the resident population has increased, I think definitely the number of visitors that come to the city of West Hollywood has increased. And when you conflate as well the nature of the city as being kind of, I'm gonna call it, this is gonna be terrible. Well, never mind. I'll skip on that. But I can see where you're coming from in that regard. I also think that there's opportunities to pursue policing that doesn't necessarily require increasing sheriff deputies themselves. I think whether that's block by block alone, whether that's another solution, there's many things that the sheriff can't do and shouldn't do because it's not their job, right? I would like to see, similar to what's been raised previously when this same topic has come up, a plan to understand if we increased and if we said we would increase sworn personnel, exactly what they would be doing, how that would help the city, and what KPIs, what performance metrics we would see an improvement to warrant that. Police don't prevent crime, right? They just respond to crime. There's something definitely to be said about, you know, having a visual presence that deters it, but it's responsive, right, by nature, similar to the fire department in a lot of regard. That's my 2 cents.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I have some questions. I didn't hear, I'm sorry, at the beginning, what the source of the ratio that you mentioned. And I just comment that there are big differences east and west in this country, rural and urban in this country, density issues. So I'm just curious what that what that number represents, and because I think that would affect how we think about it. In addition, I agree with Commissioner Blau that it isn't simply as easy as talking simply about the number of officers as a ratio to the residents. We have to talk about what the alternative services are that are available. And there are a number of alternatives to armed officers that are available, some of which we might want to use, some of which we are using, some of which we might not want to use. And I think the conversation needs to include that as well. But for me, I would start with making sure we have some data point that's actually relevant to our discussion.
I'll just say the source of that is the FBI. They do collect information as far as employment for police stations across the nation.
So, and it's a national average, it's nothing, so
National
it wouldn't take into account the differences in urban areas, suburban, rural areas, density issues, complexity issues in the population, or the significant difference just east-west in this country, which is historical. So.
No, and if you do look at Mayor Bass in Los Angeles, she is requesting, she's trying to get it up, her force, LAPD, up to 10,000. And I redid the numbers, there are just under 4 million people there. So it's actually, she's looking for a little over that 2.4 people per 1,000 residents.
I'm not suggesting I would be opposed to it. Chicago has over 20,000 officers. New York City has over 40,000 officers. We're clearly, this area, at least I'm most familiar with LAPD, under-policed compared to other big cities. But as I just want to suggest, it's a complex conversation, not simply about the number of officers. And then comment more as we get into it. But I think our overall discussion this evening, I'll put words in Commissioner Blau's mouth that he's frustrated by what we couldn't find out about the contract. I think this contract is extraordinarily opaque, and but I also don't expect any solution to that. But the bottom line question that I think Commissioner Blau was asking that didn't get answered was, what are the officers doing? And are we happy with what they're doing? Are they doing what we think they should be doing? Is the response time appropriate? Are they responding on LGBTQ plus issues appropriately? Are they responding to mental health calls appropriately? To the unhoused appropriately? And simply talking about 68 versus 69, to me, just hides the issues that we actually ought to be concerned about. But I'm not suggesting, I think it's unrealistic to think we'd be able to get into that. The contract is just too opaque for that. And dealing with an agency as big as the Sheriff's Department and knowing that realistically the city is not going to, there's no alternative that's a realistic one. It's almost a fool's errand, I think, to try to get into that. Even though I agree with you, I assume that's where you were trying to go. So, thank you.
Commissioner Ramian. Thank you, Chair. Director Reeves, maybe you could just clarify one thing for me. When you're speaking earlier in regards to attachment B, where it says, our sworn officers are 49, total of 62, and you said detectives are not listed on there from the West Hollywood Sheriff's Department, so West Hollywood doesn't have any detectives assigned to that station? Is it that we're sharing Universal Studios and other jurisdictions, and we're just piggybacking off of the others?
No, so we do have detectives that are assigned to the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, and those detectives serve the West Hollywood community, but they are not reflected in any of the numbers that you see here that we pay for as a part of our service annual agreement with the Sheriff's Department. So it is something that we are able to take advantage of as a part of the department as a whole, but you do have detectives that are assigned to West Hollywood that do investigate the crimes, right, that do occur here in our community.
So technically we have more than 62 sworn sworn personnel in West Hollywood, if you were to take into consideration
the detectives at the station, because push comes to shove, if there's a big emergency happening, those detectives will respond on site as well. So is there any
Absolutely.
way to get to list how many detectives we have to get a true accurate number of sworn personnel?
Sure, yeah, there is. And I can tell you it's a lot higher than 62 sworn staff that are assigned to West Hollywood Station, although we're only currently paying for 62 of those sworn staff. And to answer your question, absolutely. If there is an emergency situation that warrants additional support, then those detectives and other sworn personnel that are not reflected in a contract will provide that support.
Got it. And I also agree with co-chair. You know, the contract is very vague, and as the sheriff's department mentioned in their presentation, all the contracted cities use this vague contract. I'm assuming it's just a standard general contract. So I would like to see it maybe like highlight certain descriptions of what they're doing, what they could provide, so it's not as confusing when you read it. Because I read it 4 times, 5 times, and it is very confusing to understand what's in this contract and what is provided. In regards to what Commissioner Nickel was saying, or Commissioner Blau, looking into other options where it would be block by block or any unarmed security guards instead of the sheriffs. I just personally believe that having a law enforcement officer responding to a call shows much more precedence than a block by block. And I've witnessed it personally, I see it every day. Block by block does not get respected by not only the community, but the unhoused or whoever it is. And they do provide a great service to the community and to West Hollywood, but replacing them with a deputy is not the answer, I don't think. Maybe supplementing it. But with everything that's going on in our community, crime is up, everything is up. I have, neighbors, residents in West Hollywood who reach out to me who don't like to walk, their dogs past 9 o'clock on the east side. It's becoming it's a big problem. And I'm not saying let's bring it back to 68 or 67, how many deputies we had before, but let's evaluate it and see, okay, is 62 the correct number or should it be 63? But if we do these 63, I would like to have accountability, like Commissioner Blau said, what are these deputies doing? Are they responding to a call, and when the call is done, are they just hanging around, talking to each other for 15, 20 minutes, which I have witnessed? And are we paying for that? That's the other question, because I do see it all the time. After they respond to a call, they're hanging out for 10, 15 minutes. But I would like to see block by block and West Hollywood Sheriff's Department work together as a team. And I don't know how that would become more of them working as a team, but I do believe that a uniformed officer has much more of a presence than an unarmed security guard. Thank you.
Commissioner Blau.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to something that you said there, and I agree on a lot of the points that you shared, and I also feel that not only do I fully respect and appreciate the sheriffs and what they do and the way that they step in these extremely dangerous situations and put their lives on the line, and I am so thankful that they do that and for the members that do that, but in certain circumstances, based on different communities' history, whether it be with our own policing or the policing that they've experienced personally elsewhere, or within their own community's relationship with police, that that the presence of an armed officer doesn't add a beneficial element to certain interactions. And so I agree, I think it's a holistic a holistic solution is what we have to look at here. And, we could spout off numbers to say, if this number was 70, if this number was 80, if this number was 90, I don't think there's any number that anyone could say like, wow, okay, that's it, we pegged the number, right? Of sworn personnel necessary for all of us to feel safe. And I think we as a community have to also respect the alternative forms of policing and community safety development that exists out there, right? You say that block by block isn't respected. I would counter that a lot of the reason why maybe that exists is because people have that ingrained vision of them and they can't break it. And we need to reshape the conversation and the perspective about what services they provide, block by block, for instance, or any of the other service providers for community safety within our city, so that we view them as parts to benefit us, right? Parts of the solution. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you. As far as alternative policing, I did just want to bring up, maybe staff could look into this and come back with some further information. I know that Santa Monica was hiring a sort of hybrid between a police officer and an ambassador and code compliance, which was an interesting aspect of it. And they called it a public services officer. If you could look into that and come back and sort of explain to us a little bit what that would look like, it might be something to fill in the gaps. But I just to respond to 2 points from Commissioner Blau, we do sort of know where this alternative policing leads. We've been trying it in our city in the last few years. The mayor of DC is trying to roll back what was done in her city because it didn't work. And there of course was the need. A lot of people felt that it was worth giving it a try, and in many places it's just not working. Oakland, Governor Newsom just had to put 120 additional CHP officers into Oakland. They had cut 50 of their officers, they tried alternative policing, and things got really bad. So the other thing is, as far as, and I hear this a lot, and I do understand because it's what we see, that officers only respond to crime, that it's a responsive thing, that they don't deter crime. I completely disagree. And in fact, I believe that we're a destination city. I think maybe that's what you were getting ready to say. So a lot of people come here, and a lot of people are very flashy when they come here because it's a great place to come and to show what you've got and to have a good time. But that makes them vulnerable to elements that would want to take what they have. So if we advertise loudly that we're cutting our sworn officers, or that's sort of a big flashing light to criminals. And to get a little personal, I will say that I have the benefit of having been raised poor. And when you're poor, you're just around crime for all sorts of reasons. And a lot of the people that I was raised with ended up in the criminal justice system. One of them completely unjustly, but the rest of them, even if they were my friends, they did things that they deserved to serve time for. And I will say, they're not stupid. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people think of criminals. They think that they're stupid. And on Friday, I attended the joint session that we had right here in this chamber of the California State Assembly, joint information hearing on retail crime. And it was very informative, it was very interesting, but one of the people said something I really liked. They said that this is a career, this is a job. What we're up against are people that take this as a profession. If they're going to come here, if they're going to steal, if they're part of international Romanian gangs or whatever else we're up against, it is not, they're not stupid people. So I do think that if they know that we have a fully staffed police force, I think it is a deterrent. I think when a criminal looks and sees more officers around, I think they're less likely to do anything. So I just wanted to share that.
Go ahead, you
if
can
I may.
respond.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things that would benefit us is to and maybe this is a recommendation that we put back to council, is to have a better understanding, whether it be with a new sheriff or a new sworn personnel or not, what tasks are being done, right? Because that'll tell us, you know, we could look at that plainly and see, you know, with the big asterisk that, you know, we're assuming that, and I don't believe this, but we're assuming that they're not sitting around like hanging out all day, right? That they're busy, and I know that they're very busy, and they don't have time for policing all of the things that, you know, I've personally raised in this meeting as being a concern, whether it be traffic incidents or traffic policing on Fountain Avenue or on Sunset. If we see a breakdown that, you know, they're spending all of their time, all of their resources focusing on X category, and as a result, we're not taking a look at all these different items. Councilmember Meister brought up the loud vehicles on Sunset, for instance. Then that might help inform us to say, okay, well, we're low on bandwidth here, right? Yeah.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you. I just have a question for Director Rivas. So when you go to the council, what is it you take to the council? A recommendation on the budget and the staffing, or is it something different from that, or more than that? What do you take to the council?
Yeah, so as a part of the city manager's recommendation, as a part of the annual fiscal year budget, if there are any sort of requests that are made in discussing with the sheriff's station that staff agrees with, then those recommendations are made as a part of that process, and then it's up to the city council to consider what that request is. And so what looking to get out of the commission this evening is if there are recommendations to make any sort of requests as a part of that when it comes to personnel or equipment, then that's certainly something, right, that would be included as a part of that recommendation so that the city council is aware of the level of support or requests, et cetera, that are made by the Public Safety Commission. And Chair and Vice Chair, I just wanted to respond briefly to Commissioner Nichols' comment about the position for the City of Santa Monica. So we currently are actually looking at positions such as what you described. A lot of cities kind of call them different things. Most commonly, they're referred to as community service officers or community safety officers, but they are a hybrid. They are not a sworn officer. It is a non-sworn position, but that non-sworn position is trained and capable of actually taking traffic collision reports when there are not injuries associated with that traffic collision. If there are other calls for service, such as, maybe there was a burglary that occurred after the fact that somebody learned of, right, and they're contacting the station, and that necessitates having a deputy actually respond and go out to take that report, or even to take fingerprints, right, on a vehicle, or maybe it's a residential burglary. So these positions are actually trained and capable of actually going out and fulfilling those types of calls for service, which frees up, right, a sworn deputy sheriff from not having to perform that duty. And so that is something that we're looking at. A lot of contract cities that contract with the Sheriff's Department have these positions. They are hired by the city, by the contract city. However, they're assigned to the station. And so they go through a background process as well to be able to gain access to certain data and information. They are a part of the radio communication as well with the Sheriff's Department, and so they receive direction from the station that and the community that they serve. And so that is something that we are looking into, which was a result of our vice mayor and other council members that asked that during our semi-annual community safety update. There was an ask from the city council, which was approved unanimously, to have city staff look into the feasibility of those types of positions. So thank you for bringing it up, but just so you know, that is in the works. And so what we plan on doing is reaching out, like we already have, to certain contract cities to go and visit, take a look at their operations, and gain a better understanding of what that looks like, and then putting something together, that can be considered in the future.
Thank you, Director Rivas. This is a very important item for us. It's interesting as the OG here, because I was kind of here the last time we had a discussion such as this. I don't know if we got it right. So I want to make sure that we are in chorus as best we can be with whatever recommendations we make to council. And it's unfortunate that we didn't have residents here to comment on this item, because it's important to hear from the community. I think we've heard at other meetings, people don't necessarily feel safe. So does that mean an augmentation of more deputies? Does it mean, like, obviously the program that Director Rivas just spoke about will free up the deputies that we have to do policing? But I really want us to really put some thought into this and what recommendation we send to council, because I think it's important in regards to block by block and their respect. I remember when they were first implemented, they were on the east side, and it was a part-time program, and things were going well. Everyone was happy. Hours were increased. They were increased across the full city. I personally feel the shift changed from our last recommendation toward block by block, because they basically are doing the same thing they were always doing. So with that being said, Director Rivas, is tonight's meeting the only opportunity we are going to have to discuss this item? Or will you be bringing forth any additional information for us to review? I know some commissioners have asked for additional data.
I don't plan on bringing another item up for discussion. That's what this item was intended to perform, and as we look at kind of the timeline ahead, and so things get up on the agenda pretty quickly and go through the process, and so that's why I was contemplating whether to bring this item in March, and I felt that would be too late in order to do that, and so that's why I wanted to have this item before you all this evening. Just as it relates to the 5-year contract, and so our representatives from the Sheriff's Department, did make mention that every city manager, as a part of the contract cities, provides input and feedback, and just know that our mayor, our vice mayor, serve as representatives to the California Contract Cities Association, and there are a number of elected officials as well that participate and are a part of the California Contract Cities Association, and so the input and feedback provided to those city managers is also coming from the elected officials from each of those 42 contract cities. And so a lot of the concerns or questions and inquiries are things that obviously are brought to the table, but ultimately, whatever the final contract will be is something that will continue to be discussed and worked out through that process. And so I don't know with what additional information though, and maybe I could get a recap from the commission in terms of what you would be looking for if this were to be brought back next month, if there is time. Because a lot of what I heard, I felt like it was responded to, but if there is additional information that could potentially be provided, maybe if the commission can recap that now for staff, that would be helpful.
Commissioners?
I actually have a quick question, Director Rivas. Is there a way that the commission can get an analysis or a comparison of, say, last fiscal year we had 61 sworn deputies, correct? What the crime looked like for that fiscal year. And then all the previous fiscal years. So fiscal year, sorry, my eyes are. For fiscal year 20, there were 63 sworn officers. I would like to see the crime report, arrest report of what the crime looked like for that fiscal year with 63 sworn deputies. I'm not saying let's go back 20 years, but maybe 10 years or something to see what the crime looked like during that period with those number of sworn officers.
Yeah, it's certainly something, and thank you for saying that we wouldn't go back 17 or 18 or 20 years, because there is a lot of manual work that's put into that. And so, I can certainly talk with the station in terms of pulling that data and looking at like what we get right for our monthly reports, and then doing that from July 1st, right, to June 30th of the following year. Yeah, so let me discuss with the station in terms of the impact. But I mean, we could certainly pull on our end too, on the city side. All the monthly reports are posted online. And so, but that's manual work. We're just looking at the reports and then we're plugging that in and adding it up manually. So there's a little bit of work there, but we can certainly, it's doable. I just want to make sure that we could provide that in time, right? Yeah.
And I know crime goes up, crime goes down, especially crime might have been down 8 years ago, 10 years ago compared to now. But it would be interesting to see with the number of sworn deputies that we had from 62, 61, 59, to see what the crime was looking like back then in those times.
We can definitely take a look at that, yeah, and try to see if we can provide.
Commissioners, any additional requests of staff? Commissioner Nickel?
I don't know how comfortable the station would be giving their input. I know that when cuts were proposed by the commission as it was formally composed, I know that Captain Mulder was very specific about what the impact would be. If you cut 10 of our deputies, this is what's going to happen. This is what will go away. This is what this does. So I think that Commissioner Blau was asking a very good question. If we were to increase it closer to the national average, and let me be clear, I'll just say, where's everyone at with the feeling of just working closer towards it? But what would our sheriff station do with them? What could the impact be? What do they anticipate the impact could be? So I don't know if that's something that they would be comfortable weighing in on before we get together again.
Yeah, absolutely. Just know that the station captain, the station definitely provides their input and feedback, as you mentioned, and did in any of those discussions that occurred in the past. What I would just make a suggestion to the commission to consider this evening is reflecting what has been mentioned, that if there are any potential increases that the city council considers as a part of the next fiscal year budget, that any position, right, be looked at in terms of creating KPIs or a plan approach in terms of what that specific position would be doing. Or it's keep things status quo, so these are recommendations that I'm just throwing out as suggestions that could be considered by the commission this evening to provide, which would be included, as a part of any sort of discussions that the city council has. Because I don't know, again, if the timing is going to be there in terms of placing this on the agenda for an additional discussion for next month in time of the budgetary process. And so, but there are certainly other recommendations we've done in the past from the commission that if you wanted to provide during comments from commissioners at the next meeting, and have us include that as a part of a memo that then goes to the city council. That's also something to consider that takes into account. We've done that for a number of other items as well in the past that I think has been useful, at least to the commission, to feel that their individual requests and perspectives, right, were included and represented. But I do see some consensus on the commission this evening in terms of, yeah, there should be some sort of performance metric or plan, or so I think there at least is some consensus in terms of that. So that could be something that the commission, if they feel comfortable, could actually make a recommendation this evening on.
Vice Chair.
Thank you. Just two comments. One, I just happily want to say I agree with Commissioner Nickel on his last point, that if the Sheriff's Department is able to tell us what they won't do when we reduce the number of deputies, I think it's quite reasonable for us to ask them what they will do if we increase the number of deputies. So for my money, that's one area my guess is we're in agreement, and that I think getting information about that would be very helpful to us in figuring out how we feel about increasing the number of deputies. Second, I would find it very helpful to have this discussion as a group in March. Given the information we've learned today, much of it new to me, and I'm guessing new to other members, that is since Friday, since we got the contract and the information attached to it. And I'd like to think that if we have that discussion in March, and we say we're going to have that discussion in March now, that the budget process could accommodate that. So that would be my hope.
Commissioner Blau, did you have an additional comment?
Well, I was actually wondering if there was recommendations that we could come together today that we're in agreement with and make recommendations, at least now, because I don't know. I assume it's maybe there's like a rolling process in terms of the feedback that goes back, but maybe there are some areas that we can collectively agree on right now.
Commissioners, thoughts? Can you?
Are there other recommendations we could make today about? I guess this is all about the sheriff today. I mean, one that I would say is that our recommendation be that increases or decreases to public safety headcounts, whether it be the sheriff block by block, or I guess those are two knobs to turn right now, be accompanied with game plans or plans of what's going to be increased or decreased.
My personal feelings, I don't want to make a recommendation to decrease. Also in regards to block by block, since they are our only additional safety support system, are they fully staffed at this time? Because I think that's something very important to take into consideration. Again, I just keep hearing residents' comments of how they feel personally about the current state of safety. I'm not opposed to even recommending additional sheriff support, to the contract. I'm not. Again, with the understanding that we know how that's going to be handled, where deputies are going to go, how they'll be deployed. I would just, as a city, the way the laws are currently written, is this going to be perfect? No. But I think we need to make sure our residents feel as safe as possible. Commissioner Ramian.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree with Chair Hallman. My recommendation to City Council will also be not to reduce any more deputies at the station. Increasing deputies I would consider, but I would like to see the comparison to see what the crime data looked like back then, along with what those duties will entail. Because if we do, throwing a number out there, if we were to bring in 5 more deputies, what are those 5 deputies going to do? They need to be able to do something at the station. And I'm sure there's a lot of work that can be done, but I just want to say let's bring in deputies and not have a job for them to do. But in regards to what Chair Hallman said, I see residents every day in my walks and they talk to me. And the majority of the residents I do speak to on the east side are senior citizens who are scared to walk outside after a certain hour. But also just regular residents who are not senior citizens. It is a scary time out there when you just want to walk to the 7-Eleven to get something to drink, or go to the Trader Joe's, or go to Smart and Final, and not knowing, should you take your phone with you? Should you take your wallet with you? And living in fear is not the way to live. And is bringing in 100 deputies gonna make everyone feel safer? No. But it's that sense of relief knowing that, okay, we have a fully staffed sheriff's department. If I do need them, they'll respond quickly. So that would be my recommendation, not to decrease any more positions in the sheriff's department, but considerably possibly adding some more. But like I would like to see those statistics for the crime, what it was during the last couple of fiscal years, and having jobs for these officers to be doing if we do bring on more deputies.
Well, one thing I can add to that, and I have been asking for this for several years, they're asking the question, why can't we have patrol deputies on foot? I think it's important for them to be able to interact with the community, speak with the community, prior to an escalated situation. I think we need to have a better relationship with law enforcement. So I think that's something that could be considered, say, if an increase were implemented, maybe those deputies go to foot patrol. Because I've been asking for it on the east side, and I know there have been, I'll just say, random foot patrols, but I'd like to see it on a regular basis. And again, I emphasize, I think it's important for the community to have these interactions before something goes wrong. Commissioner Blau, did you have another comment?
Nope.
Oh. Commissioner Nichols?
Chair, I'm just sorry. And so I just wanted to also just make mention, so as the commissioners are giving their comments, like this is all great feedback and input that can be provided to the council. And so what Commissioner Ramian had mentioned about, not his perspective, right, not reducing at this time, and then making sure that in the future, as a suggestion to the city council, that they consider the fiscal year, right, crime statistics in relation to the number of sworn personnel to consider when they're making their decisions, right? So that is a recommendation that can be worded in that way that can go to the city council, in addition to Chair, what you had just made mention right now, right? And so I just want to throw that out as the discussion is continuing, that I am hearing a lot of recommendations from individual commissioners that I think can all be lumped in, right, and individualized, like we've done in the past in terms of bullet points that can be reflected in a memo that goes to the city council. So,
yes, Commissioner Nichols.
Thank you, Chair Hallman. So, following up on what you were saying, number one about block by block, I agree that the attitude towards block by block changed when it appeared that we were trying to replace sworn deputies with block by block. I live near you. I remember when they first came to our city, and I remember that it felt really good to see them, because it's, again, I do feel that a presence of a uniform is a deterrent. So, and in the case of block by block, it has to do a lot with homeless issues and things like this. They're there, they respond. And I agree, people are feeling a lot less safe. So, we could certainly make a recommendation tonight. We could put a number to it to increase our number of sworn deputies. Again, I just use the national average because it's an average and it's something to go from. It doesn't mean it's necessarily right for us, but we could put a number to it, and then that would give the opportunity for Captain Mulder, for the station to respond. If you give us these deputies, then we could do foot patrols. We could do things like you're talking about. I completely agree with the foot patrols. And then when it goes before council, they will have a lot of information. But that's my feeling. So I'm wondering if anyone would like to respond to that about putting a number to it tonight, and then giving Captain Mulder an opportunity to say what they would do with that number.
I'm curious, what is your number?
Well, as I said, if it were the national average, it would be 88. If it were 2 instead of 2.4 per 1,000 residents, it would be 73 officers. We're currently at 62. But, you know, we're all here. We all act as a group in unison, so it's something that we should discuss. Is there a number? Is there any increase that anyone else is comfortable with?
Commissioner Freiberg, do you want to weigh in?
I think we just got this report on what, Friday night? It's now Monday night. Barely had time to look at it. Anyone with a full-time job maybe had to work over the weekend. And now we're supposed to come up with some answers to this very complex questions. As for adding more officers, that's like saying A plus B equals C. Like, it's not going to guarantee anyone's safety. And I'm with you, and I wish that it did. I think a lot of other cities are reimagining, if you will, the word that everyone is using, because it's not working. So they're looking in other ways to see what does work. The old-fashioned way isn't working. Let's move on to something new. Could more police deputies work? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's not going to make everybody feel safe. They can't be everywhere all at once. We haven't even heard from the sheriff's department. How could we even know what they want? I don't understand why we're not even hearing from them at all, any requests that they have. I think a lot of politicians, you know, just from working in politics, residents will say, I'm scared. We'll give you more police, let's say, like Mayor Bass. And then she could just wash her hands. Look, I did it. I gave you more police. What more do you want? I did my job. You know, and it's kind of a political tool. I'm not saying that, I'm not against what you're saying, Commissioner Nickel. I'm just thinking this was something I would have to read about. Like, where's the empirical evidence that this is true? You know, where's the reports? Where's, you know, the studies that have been done? This is something that would take a little time, and that's why I'm saying we're given something on a Thursday night, and supposed to have all the answers and come together as a group by Monday. I mean, how is it even possible? I was on the Human Services Commission, and we were given a lot of information, and we were, schooled pretty well to be prepared when we got the report. I asked for this report last year, and I was made to do a public records request just to get it. I'm on this commission. This was coming up. Why would that be? This is something that should be also available to the residents. There's nobody here. There's no one here to even give their opinion. This came up so quick, really out of nowhere. Was it on the work plan? I don't even know. Do we have a new work plan? I haven't seen one. We're sitting here going back and forth, and it's very obvious we don't have all the information that we need. It is very obvious that we're kind of just coming up with shit now. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? Okay, let's just figure this out and then push it aside. So I think, how can we make any decision without going back and really studying what you are suggesting, Commissioner Nickel? I can't give you an answer in 5 minutes of something that's so complex. I would have to read about it and see how that can be fixed. Who's done it? Did it work? Did it not work? What about the other cities? What did they do? Did they already try this and it didn't work? You know what I mean? I can't give you an answer.
May I? Yeah, thanks. I understand. And it was in our work plan that we originally received, I believe, in July. And I thought that at some point we were going to vote to see who would be responsible for different things. It was the first thing on the work plan, and that never happened for us to really get into the contract. But as far as understanding the complex nature of this, I've lived here for a long time. I've been a member of Neighborhood Watch Group. I've followed these things. Chair Hallman was here when there was a vote to defund and certainly understands the things that have happened since then. I did cite several different instances of cities that did try alternative policing and have had to pull back from that. We have been trying it. I think that most people will say that residents have felt less safe over the last few years. So I think that I would hope that we would have enough information from living in the city and being aware of public safety issues to at least suggest something. If not, that's totally fine. If there's time to come back next month with more information and we can discuss this, I think that would be really good so that everyone is really comfortable with what we're dealing with and has time to really dig into the issue and talk to residents. I hope there are a bunch of residents watching right now. I really do. But I think that's totally reasonable as long as there is a chance for this commission, because it is part of our responsibility to recommend the level of policing, as long as we have that chance to do that before a final decision is made by council.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah. Of course.
That's not how I come to conclusions, not just by walking down the street, whether I feel safe or not. How many more, deputies is it going to take? You need to read about this. You need to read evidence, empirical evidence from studies done, not going by fear. I mean, of course, everyone's scared. I'm a woman in this city. It's more scarier for me to walk down the street than it is for you. And I would love to feel safe, but it's not going to happen. No matter how many deputies you put on the street, they can't be everywhere all at once. Like I said, I go by empirical evidence. I'm not going to sit here and say, just because I feel scared, let me get some more cops on the street. It's just not, I can't make that recommendation. I just can't.
And I'm not suggesting that. I mean, data matters, absolutely.
Could have really rolled something out, if we had a chance going way back and had seen the contract and had been discussing it maybe a little over time and just so we were ready. I mean, we didn't even know what was going on today. I didn't know. I knew it was here, but I didn't know they were just going to do their quick presentation and be gone, and then that was it. Now come up with your suggestions. I don't think that's fair for this commission. I really don't.
Vice Chair, any additional comments? Okay, thank you. Commissioners?
If I may, I just want to be clear that I'm not recommending, in my earlier statement, I'm not recommending, we reduce the number of sheriffs. When I was saying increase or decrease, I was being generic in terms of any sort of delta, that it should be backed up by a plan by what that's going to be. I don't feel comfortable with saying 88. I'm not opposed to an increase because I know how busy the sheriff deputies are, and I know that there are crimes that they are not able to police that I think do need to be policed. What that number necessary to hit those, to execute in those areas that I think need to be executed on, and whether all of the bucket of work needs to be done by the sheriff, if there's things that can be taken off the sheriff's plate and shifted onto a more appropriate party, let's do that. And then maybe we don't need 88, 100 sheriff deputies, right? That's my recommendation.
Commissioner Ramian, go ahead.
I just want to say one last thing. And I agree with what Commissioner Freebird said. This is a very important subject, and this chamber should be packed right now with residents. We always hear residents complaining about everything, that they're not safe, the scooters and whatnot, but this is such an important public safety decision that's going to be made that this chamber should be full. I'm surprised there aren't more residents here. I'm surprised no one's calling in. But if residents are watching this or listening to this, I encourage you guys to please participate in these public safety meetings, voice your concerns. Because if you look at the chambers right now, it's completely empty. And it shouldn't be like this. If you have a complaint, you got to come speak up. It's just like voting. If you're not going to vote, don't complain. So I'm asking for residents to please come out and speak and help the commission and help City Council make the right decision. Thank you.
Commissioners, in my ardent support of deputies on foot patrol, I'm going to throw a number out, and let's see where we land. My number is 4 deputies designated to foot patrol throughout the community. Thoughts?
I'm fine with that. We all agree that we need more foot patrols, and as long as it moves us along towards that national average, I'm behind it.
And I agree. I said I wasn't going to give a number, but in my head, I have a number because I was going to increase it by 3, and they'll be allocated to foot patrol as well. So that was the number I had in my head, but I still want to see statistics.
Anyone else? Vice Chair.
I don't know how to evaluate that number without hearing from the Sheriff's Department what that would mean. I don't know what 4 additional deputies mean. There would be 1 on a regular basis who's walking around. If that's the case, I'm not sure what we're adding. And I just don't know the answer to that without some analysis and some facts. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it.
Vice Chair, if you can speak into the mic, it's not, your mic wasn't.
Sorry. I'm not able to evaluate the proposal without hearing from the Sheriff's Department what it would mean to have 4 additional deputies assigned to walking. How many would that actually mean on a regular basis? What effect do we think that might have? And I don't think it's unreasonable for us to ask for data and information from the Sheriff's Department when we're talking about a specific proposal like this.
Anyone else? Commissioner Nickel.
So Director Rivas, if we were to come back next month, would there still be time for us to have a vote? Say we move this number 4, and then we give Captain Mulder a chance to respond. And if we get any additional information that Commissioner Freiberg wants to give us a chance to vote, is there still time to do that for us to do our duty and to weigh in before council has to make a final decision?
For us to place it on the agenda for next month, I don't know. I mean, based off of the timeline that I looked at, that's the reason why I placed it on the agenda this month. I did make mention of us placing it on the agenda last commission meeting. I understand there were some commissioners that weren't here. It was a part of the work plan. But understanding that, I mean, there certainly is time to provide input and feedback next month. But to have, you know, the data and everything that you mentioned included and prepared and ready, right, to have that discussion by the Public Safety Commission next month, that I don't know and I can't respond to this evening. But we will make every effort in terms of that, in terms of fulfilling that. But just know, again, as suggestions that I threw out, is that all of the comments and input and feedback that's mentioned this evening, from the empirical evidence that Commissioner Freiberg had mentioned, to foot patrols, to looking at alternative policing, like the community service officer, right, that was mentioned, to having that statistical information that Commissioner Miniman had mentioned regarding fiscal year crime data, right, all of those, that's a comprehensive list of things for the city council to consider. And just know that Captain Mulder, as maybe some of you are aware of or not, always participates as a part of the semi-annual community safety updates that go to the city council, and does provide his recommendations as a part of the presentation that he provides the full council. And the council hears that, and they obviously make a decision based off of the collective input that everybody is providing them. But even if the station is making recommendations, know that it is the city's position to make their own recommendations, some of which may be in opposition to what the West Hollywood Sheriff Station is requesting. So I also wanted to just you know, make mention of that to the commission as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on what you were saying, because, you know, with the Human Services Commission, we would hear, you know, we would make recommendations. The city would then make their recommendations, and then we'd come back, but we also would hear what the contractors wanted. Do any of you know what they're asking? How do we not know this? We should know what they want. You want foot patrol. They might think that's crazy. I don't know, you know. But I'm just saying, it's like, why wouldn't we ask them what they want? Why aren't they telling us what they want? Why aren't we hearing what they want, what the city wants? Your recommendation as well is very important, you know. So why aren't we hearing any of this? I mean, this was like typical for the Human Services Commission. We would hear both, and then we'd be able to come up with a decision and say, okay, this is how we'd like it, and then our recommendation would go to the city council. And I just feel like we have nothing, just nothing. We're just throwing numbers out. Not even giving time to even research it. You don't need to come up with the research, that's our job. You know, all of us could go home and research these things. But, you know, to just start throwing out numbers, and who knows? I don't know. You know, I don't know how we could actually make a recommendation.
And you all don't have to provide recommendations. It could be the input and feedback that you all have provided. Case in point, what Commissioner Freiberg had just mentioned. So that can be included, like it has in the past, on other items that have come before the commission for the city council to consider. So we'll continue to look at the timeline and certainly see if there is feasibility of bringing an item back, but I think from everything that we've heard this evening, there certainly is enough to compile and have a list of concerns and inquiries and asks and things to consider for the city council if they're electing to, increase or decrease or whatever decision is made as it relates to our public safety contract.
Commissioners?
Will you put a number out there? Do you want to bring it to a vote?
That's why I threw the number out. I wanted to get a temperature from the commission. I mean, I figured someone had to throw a number out there.
I'm happy to back it. And again, I'm looking at national average. I'm looking at the lived experience of being in West Hollywood through the ups and downs of our level of service. And also, we certainly have heard a lot from our officers in this commission have come before us and talked about these things. And if you watch any of the city council meetings, certainly officers have said that more is always better. So.
Always ask for more because they come down. There's going to be, it's kind of like when you go to buy a car. It's like it's the same thing. Like you're going to come to the middle. I think it's very obvious that you just want a number and that's it, right?
Well,
to recommend any number is fine with you.
No, not any number. More than we have now to get us closer to the national average.
But I mean, so that's the only recommendation you have is number of increase of deputies. I'm sorry. That is it, right?
Does that national average come with a crime statistic as well, or is it just the number of sheriff bodies per capita in these cities?
Yeah, it's employment data for national average employment data compiled by the FBI.
Sure, okay, and so that doesn't speak to anything about, is that average high, is it low, in terms of the number of bodies necessary to do this? If we're talking about adding 4, as Chair Hallman recommended, I don't know what that means, as Vice Chair said, right? Does that practically mean one officer walking around? I don't know if the sheriff can handle officers walking around. I don't know if that's something that they typically do, and what that would practically look like. I mean, I can imagine it, right? It's not a hard concept, but I don't know if it's within their capabilities.
Just to chime in, West Hollywood did have foot patrol several years ago, but it was on an overtime status. So deputies would do foot patrol in the entertainment district, but it was considered overtime. So by recommending 4 deputies, what I believe Chair Hallman and Commissioner Nicola and myself are saying, those 4 deputies will be allocated to foot patrol that we're not paying overtime for. There'll be strictly foot patrol from, it could be wherever it's going to be from Doheny going all the way east to wherever it would be. But I would like to see that number be allocated to foot patrol.
And I mean, just looking at these numbers from 2019, 2020 cost, right? And I'm sure it's ballooned since then. We're looking at, with liability, at minimum, $1.2 million for 4 new deputies, right? And with an unknown impact of what that's going to look like. And I think what myself and Commissioner Freiberg and the vice chair are asking is to better understand what that's going to look like. I'm not going to buy a $1.2 million house without touring it, without even knowing how many bedrooms are in it, right? Or the color, what street it's on, that kind of a thing, right? That's where I'm at.
I understand. You want to know where those 4 deputies are going to go or what they're going to be doing.
Yes.
Commissioners, what if, I'm just going to throw this out there because I want to get comments so we can come to some type of decision. the 4 that I suggested for foot patrol, could it be done as a pilot program as we're doing with some of our other programs? Thoughts? I mean, we have to look at this from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, Chair, and I just want to hop in. So you all don't have to make a decision that you're all in agreement with this evening. So, you know, again, just to reiterate that if the commission wishes to include, which, you know, we've taken notes, and we will ensure that all the input and feedback is provided, is accounted for. That's not to say that we won't potentially come back, right, next month. But any additional information as well that's shared at that time certainly will have time to be included and added to the input and feedback that everybody is sharing this evening. I want to make mention too, I know our Contract Law Enforcement Bureau and the intent of having them here today was to go over the contract, to answer some questions, to kind of go over the 575 form. But in addition to that, one of the things that I know wasn't touched on is currently there's a moratorium in place in the Sheriff's Department that doesn't allow for any additional staff to be added to the contracts for contract cities. Right now, we are fulfilling those positions through overtime and taking a creative approach, which the department has agreed to in adding these positions. And so if we look at kind of a pilot, and I know folks are mentioning the foot patrols, that is something that is done still in terms of overtime through our supplemental patrol budget that we have with the Sheriff's Department. So to do a pilot, I just want to make sure, just to be careful that we're not saying adding positions. Maybe the recommendation or suggestion or the thought process is to have the Sheriff's Department focus and dedicate more resources, right, on foot patrols, potentially even bike patrols, because that is something that has come up before in the past. And so, you know, the sheriffs in the station schedule those foot and bicycle patrols as much as possible. Obviously, there's some seasonal challenges when it's raining. Of course, you're not going to be deploying folks on bike patrol, right? And in certain other instances, but you know, in the summer months, or you know, as the weather permits, or if there's operations and things like that of that nature, or things are occurring, then of course that's where the deployment, right, is made. And so again, the commission can certainly make those suggestions, right, in terms of saying, hey, please look at these aspects, please dedicate X amount, have a schedule as it relates to foot and bicycle patrol. And so all of that is important information that can be included and lumped in together too, as part of input provided to the council. So,
can you regurgitate the first part of that statement that you made? Because that could have been important for us to know before we started down this road. So I'm a little confused.
You had mentioned about overtime. Yeah, we're already doing foot patrol, but it's overtime. So my comment was going to be, would it be cost efficient not to pay overtime and have dedicated deputies on foot patrol rather than paying overtime?
So yeah, let me backtrack. So we have supplemental patrol, a budget that has always been in place here at the city. And so for additional foot patrols, if we have situations like civil unrest or protests, things that occur, right, that we didn't plan for, security enhancements, right, for different situations, then we work with the sheriff's station to fill those positions in that focused assignment. And so, you know, there is a budget already in place that provides, that is where our foot and bicycle patrols were being pulled from. That has been communicated to the city council. It's a part of the semi-annual community safety update that's been provided. I could tell you since before my time, that's always been added as I've served in this role. So sorry of me not making mention of that earlier. Was that the part, or were you talking about the moratorium, Chair, as it relates to adding sworn personnel to the contract at this time for a contract city?
That part.
That part. So yeah, that was also something that's been communicated before. So our 575 form, which reflects the positions, that has not taken into account the last 3 positions that have been added, or I should say been approved by the city council. That includes 1 sergeant to our community impact team, 1 a deputy to our community impact team, and then most recently, right, we had our the patrol deputy that was added. And so those positions are currently being backfilled by overtime, although we at the city are not paying for that overtime rate. We're just paying the contract service level rate for those positions. And so the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is actually picking up and paying for that overtime cost that they're needing to kind of fulfill and backfill that position. So we're getting by in filling those positions currently, and that's because of the shortages that the department is having as a whole, no differently than the rest of the police departments across the state or even in the nation are dealing with in terms of hiring sworn personnel. So we are, appreciative of the fact of being able to fill those positions through this approach. And when the Sheriff's Department ends up lifting that moratorium in terms of allowing contract cities to add that now, right, to their 575, then we will do so. And so you'll never know the difference, but I'm just, just making mention that just keep that in mind as you're considering this. But so hopefully that was helpful.
Chair, if I can, there's actually one important point that I want to point out to the commission. With the +1 deputy that is reflected as of February 1st, 2024, we're actually at the maximum number of sheriff deputies that has actually been reflected as far back as fiscal year 2007. There's a note in there that's really, I didn't notice it at first, but you see when they dropped down from 67 to 62, note 1 reflects that that is due to the fact that they were allocating heads for sheriff positions that they were unable to fill, and so they reduced down to the number that they were able to fill, which is 62. So being at 62 where we are is the same, it would appear, as where we have ever been within this timeline here, with the exception of, I think there was a 63. There's a couple 63s in 2017 and 2018. So just as a note on that.
Okay. Director Rivas, can you confirm that? Not to put you on the spot, but is what Commissioner Blau just stated correct?
Correct. Well, yes, we're at currently with the addition of what was approved last month. We are at 62. Pre-COVID, we were at 63, and that did include a traffic camera enforcement deputy that was assigned. But when the city decided to conclude that program, then that also included the reduction of that deputy that was assigned to that assignment. And so if you look at kind of the patrol deputies and the special team deputies, we are more or less back to pre-pandemic levels.
How many traffic deputies do we have?
We currently have 2 motor deputies.
Because I know there was a deputy on the east side today. I haven't seen a deputy there in quite some time. And I would say in a very short period of time, his presence was felt. So I'm just throwing that out there. You know, traffic deputies, 2, is that enough? I mean, it's just something for everyone to consider. I live on a street where people run the stop signs all the time. It's a residential neighborhood. It's not the 405. So, Commissioner Blau, were you going to make a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I live on Fountain. I live just off Fountain. I cross Fountain twice a day to go to the gym, and it's death-defying, right? It's crazy. I think 2 is too few, but as it relates to like an overall sum, maybe there's reallocation or balancing, but I'm not the expert in that regard to say how they allocate those. But yeah.
So, Director Rivas, you don't feel confident that, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we could place this item on our March agenda. However, if we individually chose to make comments or suggestions during commissioner comments, is that what we're looking at as an option?
So the commission's done that this evening, right, in terms of providing your comments and your feedback. So all of that is going to be included, and so you can certainly have an opportunity to do that again in March. I just don't know the requests that are being made in terms of analyzing, having the statistical data. That more than likely is not going to be completed in time for next month's meeting. But that doesn't mean that that's not going to be considered by the city council, because if the commission, if individual commissioners are making those requests, that information is going to be communicated to them. And that's the important discussion that we're trying to have right here this evening, and that the commission can certainly have next month as well. So I just, I don't want to set any, misleading expectations that everything that the commission is requesting this evening is going to be prepared, completed, and then presented back to the commission. But that doesn't mean that's not going to be considered by the city council, because everybody's comments are going to be taken into consideration, compiled, right, and then communicated to the city council for consideration if they in fact select to make any sort of adjustments to our law enforcement contract.
Got it. Commissioners, does everyone understand? So any additional comments before we move on, or questions? Okay, so moving on to item 8E, the Public Safety Commission will discuss the cancellation of or rescheduling of the June 10th and November 11th commission meetings. Director Rivas, is there something you can add to that just so we have a clearer understanding?
Sorry, turn off my mic. So the June 10th, so the first meeting in June was canceled by the city council as a result of Pride, or WeHo Pride, and so their meeting has been rescheduled to June 10th. And so we have 2 options as a commission, is to either cancel the June meeting or if it's the will of the commission to have staff look at an alternative date. But just know that, there may not be available dates for us to meet here in the council chambers, but we can certainly take a look at that. And if the commission is adamant about having a meeting in June, regardless of the location, then we can certainly look at other locations as well, the City Hall EOC room, and Plummer Park, which is where the commission met before. But just know that those other locations, there is no broadcast capabilities. The only ability to broadcast is here in the council chambers, and so we would have to look at a potential date, send an email to the full commission to see what the availability is to ensure that we have a quorum. And so that's as it relates to June 10th. And similarly to November 11th, a date. And so council chambers will be utilized at that time. And so, you know, we have the option, similar to June, is to look for an alternative date or make a cancellation for that month's meeting.
Got it. My personal input, I don't like when we cancel meetings. I would like to see if there's an option that can be presented to us, which I know we have worked out, I believe, before in the past. Commissioners, thoughts?
I agree with Chair Hallman. I would like to not cancel any meetings and hopefully reschedule either via Zoom or at another location. Public safety is a very important topic, and I don't think it's one of those meetings that we should cancel.
Does
Agreed.
anyone else?
I don't think we should cancel, if at all possible.
Commissioner Blau?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine with me. I think if we can find a date that's amenable, that works for everybody, I definitely agree that it's important to have. Do we have to decide on the dates right now? Would we even be able to decide on the dates right now if we were trying to like figure out this
No,
facility?
I think it would be staff would
No.
have to look at dates
Yeah.
and locations.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. We wanted to get the temperature first, and that way we'll look at available dates, and then obviously get back to everybody as quickly as possible because we want to reserve, you know, whatever location. And just note, Commissioner Reminian, that there is no Zoom option. Meetings are in person as it relates to the commission. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Freiberg. And Vice Chair.
I agree. We should see what the proposal is, and if it works, it works.
All right. IHOP it is. Oh, wait, it's gone. Moving on. Item 9, items from staff. Staff, is there anything else you would like to add this evening?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. We have a few updates we'd like to share with you tonight. One, we are excited to announce the return of our Public Safety Appreciation Event, which will be taking place on March 6th, just around the corner. We will be recognizing the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, Los Angeles County Fire Department, and our block-by-block ambassadors here at Council Chambers from 11:30 to 1:30, which will include a luncheon that will take place here in the Auto Court. We're going to shut that down and then move into Council Chambers for the formal awards portion of the ceremony. Please save the date, and we'll be sharing more information with you on this event in the coming weeks.
Could you say the date again, please?
3-6.
This month, the Neighborhood and Business Safety Division Code Enforcement Team has begun conducting inspections on multifamily properties in West Hollywood. The proactive pilot program has begun on the east side of the city and will move west across the community. The goal of the inspection program is to inspect multifamily properties every 3 years to ensure city rental housing properties are being maintained in compliance with the city's municipal code standards. Inspections will focus on exterior property conditions and common areas. Code enforcement officers will also be checking for any potential short-term rental activity being advertised at a property. Tenants can also voluntarily schedule an interior inspection of their unit as part of this proactive pilot program if they choose to. Next, effective July 1st, Bill AB 1013 will go into effect, which mandates that nightlife venues offer patrons testing strips designed to detect the presence of controlled substances in a drink. This law will only apply to businesses with Type 48 licenses, which serve alcohol but don't sell food. Lastly, the city has begun planning for Ciclavia and the LA Marathon. We will be working closely with our sheriffs and fire department to ensure the appropriate street closures and public safety measures are in place. The LA Marathon is just around the corner on March 17th, and Ciclavia is coming up on August 18th. This concludes the updates from the Public Safety Division. Thank you.
I apologize again. What's the date of the LA Marathon again?
LA Marathon is on March 17th.
Okay, so 3/17. Great, thank you.
St. Patrick's Day.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Secretary, just want to make sure there are no public comments.
Yes, there are no public comments.
Great, thank you. Item 11 is comments from commissioners. Commissioners, do you have any comments at this time?
I do. I actually have a question about one of the items that you brought up. I had it. Regarding the pilot program for inspecting the rental units in the city, is that related exclusively to the rent stabilized units, or is that all rental units?
All multi-family units with 3 or more units.
Okay. And is that, are you, the fire department does something similar I was asking about earlier this evening in terms of the fire prevention inspections on a 3-year basis within their realms of service. A recommendation, maybe you work opposite them. You know, they start at the top of the pile, you start at the bottom, meet in the middle. Maybe buildings get seen more quickly. Recommendation.
Well, if I can chime in, this was something that was discussed that I brought up on a previous commission. And it was really to focus on making sure that residents, their units were provided with what they needed for safety. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and I believe they're also going to check heating units, correct? As part of this program. Again, this is all volunteer. This is if a resident requests them to come in. I know with fire, yes, they do go out and survey buildings. They look at smoke detectors in public areas, but they do not go into units. And that was my intent with pushing this through. Again, I will say as a fire survivor, I just want everyone to be as safe as possible. So I was pleased when Director Rivas presented this to us and how it's going to roll out. But again, it's optional for residents.
Yeah, and just to respond to Commissioner Blas, so the fire prevention and what they do in terms of looking at fire sprinklers, you know, which are typically in the common areas, and looking at other fire-related fire code issues. So that is something that's done separately. So this program was actually a city council directive that at the time, code compliance, now neighborhood and business safety, and our code enforcement team received back in 2019. So we are barely getting to the point of implementation just because of COVID, and again, just making requests because of additional staffing that was needed because our code enforcement program did not have the capability whatsoever to, or the capacity to implement such a program without adding additional staff. And so we did enter into a contract with a vendor who has provided us with 2 code enforcement officers that are contracted, and it is a pilot program, and the intent is to visit all of the common areas in multifamily properties within a 3-year period, and while staff is visiting that particular property for inspection, they will post in a number of areas informing tenants that if they wish to request an interior inspection, then that would be completed at that time, but they need to schedule that with that code enforcement team that's providing that service. If a tenant does not request that, then code enforcement staff is not going to be going inside, right, of the tenant units in multifamily properties, but they'll be looking at all of the rest of the exterior and other areas, elevators, laundry rooms, if there's a recreation or community room at the facility, and looking at those types of things. But if they do see concerns that are fire related or they need the support from another agency, they certainly will work with them on that.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, both. I appreciate that.
Commissioners, anyone else? Commissioner Nichols.
Thank you, Chair Hallman. Just a few things I did since the our last meeting. I did do a walking tour with a resident who showed me the FMB properties. Of course, we know the one on Sierra Bonita, which burned. The one I mentioned earlier on Genesee on Friday was another one. We saw at least 10. Some of them were not secure still. There's one on Ogden, a very large one on Ogden. And the chain link fence on the corner, it was just pulled down so that people could step right over it. It was at 1016 Ogden. So I know that there's foreclosures and sales going on. I was just wondering if Director Rivas had any updates or anything that we can do. I know the community already expressed concerns about these buildings. There are more of them than you think. Like if you go, there are ones that are complete buildings that they bought, evacuated, and are sitting there, to holes in the ground, to buildings that are almost complete, and then it just stopped. So if there's any update you could give us?
Yeah, absolutely. And you are right, because we've been in communication with residents. Our code enforcement team has, as it relates to certain foreclosure notices that have been posted. We did receive communication from a court-appointed receiver on a fraction of the properties that are owned by the developer that you mentioned. And so that receiver has been appointed temporarily. And so a receiver essentially can take possession and now is responsible for managing that property. And this was done by the lender, the bank essentially filing a case on the property owner and then getting that temporary order approved. There is a hearing that is slated for sometime this month for that order to be considered made permanent on those properties that lender is responsible for. It doesn't include all of the properties. All of those are being inventoried by a number of different divisions in the city, our building and safety, our planning, our code enforcement. So there's a comprehensive team that is looking at each of those and looking at the different stages that each of those properties are in. And then, of course, working with our city attorney's office and our city prosecutor's office on figuring out what's going to be the most efficient and effective way to move forward on those properties in terms of getting them addressed. I do know that the court-appointed receiver did perform work on the properties they're responsible for. I know some of them were on Ogden, and so I don't know the addresses off top of my head, but I know that they did make some repairs to some of the fencing. I know that there was security that was placed on the Genesee property as well. And so there are notices, there are orders that are being issued by code enforcement. It is a top priority for them in terms of just making sure, as I mentioned earlier, that inspections are occurring on certain properties, right, based on the number of issues that are being observed and are being addressed. And so we hopefully hope to have, a lot of those properties remedied from a legal perspective. I know it is going to take some time because there are some financial challenges for the owner. And so as we're starting to see some of these properties evolve, being assigned a court-appointed receiver, that is going to be helpful because at least the receiver that reached out to us recently has certainly followed through and been very responsive for those properties. And so we'll continue to work on those. And we do plan, code enforcement does plan on providing an update to the city council regarding vacant properties next month. And as a part of that, they will be looking at any sort of potential policy changes that are made, meaning that any sort of recommended amendments to the vacant property ordinance to strengthen the tools that code enforcement staff needs to address vacant properties. That will be a topic of discussion as well that will be presented to the city council for consideration. So we'll certainly keep the commission updated on any progress as it relates to that.
Good. Thank you so much. It is a concern of a lot of residents who live around them. Also, on January 29th, I joined the discussion of the Inside Safe program with LA Mayor Bass's office. They talked about the cleanup at Poinsettia Park. And after that, I did meet with Mr. David Wynn, who's a Central Area representative of Mayor Bass. And he's very interested in eyes on the ground. So of course we know that for years this has been an issue at Poinsettia Park, that there have been cleanups and people coming back. So any residents who live near there who would like to get in touch with him and just say if they see anything going on, they can certainly email me. It's commissionernickel@gmail.com. Nickel spelled Nickle. And last thing I would say is I mentioned earlier that Friday I did attend the California State Assembly Joint Information Hearing on Retail Crime. It was held right here, and thanks to Assemblymember Rick Zabur for bringing this important hearing here to West Hollywood. Thanks.
Also, just a few things I want to touch on. On 125, I participated as part of a listening session for the citywide strategic plan. The meeting focused on citywide and department division-specific priorities, opportunities, and challenges. I thought it was a great meeting. I believe there will be additional listening sessions to come. On 129, I was very happy to attend the celebration at the Wild for the annual West Hollywood Thelma Houston Day, where Mayor Erickson and Vice Mayor Byers gave her a proclamation in honor of her day and her contribution to the LGBTQ+ community. And also, as Commissioner Nichols did, I did attend Assembly Members Zabur Select Committee Assembly Public Safety meeting on retail theft. There were 3 areas that were discussed: statewide efforts, local efforts, and addressing fencing and reselling. And I think Commissioner Nichols will agree it was quite fascinating. It really was a fascinating session to attend. That is it for me. Commissioners, anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. I would say good evening to everyone in the chamber, but we have no residents here, so good evening, Lieutenant, and everyone from the Sheriff's Department. That is my main concern right now. I want to know why this chamber is empty with no residents at the Public Safety Commission. You know, the agendas get posted. This was a very important topic for the community and for the commission. And why is no one in the chamber? I sure would want to think that people are watching online via Zoom, but have the residents lost hope? Are they thinking that nothing is going to change in the city? Is that why they're not coming and speaking? But there's no reason why this chamber should be empty. I would love to see more residents in our future meetings. I invite all of our West Hollywood residents to come join the meetings. Please speak up. I encourage all residents of West Hollywood to also join your neighborhood watch. Be active in your community. If you see something, say something. But please, I would just love to see these chambers filled more with residents at our upcoming meetings. It's very important. Public safety is a very important issue, and we all need to be involved. And every single voice matters. So please come and speak to us. Thank you.